Chapter 652. Gohan, hurry up and let me have a bite. I haven't eaten meat for thousands of years. Chinpin, who finally woke up, opened his mouth to eat Gohan's meat. Seeing that his two treasures were living such a pitiful life in this dormitory, Gohan felt ashamed in his heart. Gohan, who would absolutely not agree to Chinpin's request, actually put his finger into Chinpin's mouth. Chinpin was just about to fiercely bite down, but he suddenly thought of something. He stretched out his little tongue and licked Gohan's finger. Gohan suddenly felt that his finger was itchy and a little moist. Bah! Stupid Gohan, you actually don't wash your hands. Chinpin spat and felt disgusted. Stupid Chinpin! The golden spot in front of Gohan's chest was already gone, but Gu-yun only had her own place to go. She quickly climbed onto Gohan's body and sat on Gohan's shoulder. She forcefully hammered a small fist on Gohan's head. Smelly brother, bad brother, where did you go to die? Gu-yun missed you so much, woo-woo. As she spoke, Gu-yun, this strong little girl, actually started to cry. Ai, brother was seriously injured and lost the ability to move. Even his Zifu was sealed. Today, I just got better and came to find you. Gohan explained half-truthfully. I don't want to listen. I don't want to listen. I don't want to listen. After Gohan didn't know how long it took for him to explain, but he finally coaxed Gu-yun, this little ancestor. In fact, Gohan understood that Gu-yun didn't want to make trouble. She was just simply venting the negative emotions that had accumulated in the past few days. And Chinpin, this heartless guy, smiled and looked at Gu-yun and Gu-yun's fight. Then he changed into a comfortable position in the nursery bag. Ai, the happiest thing in life is lying in Gohan's nursery bag. After Gu-yun vented out her negative emotions, she sat on Gohan's neck very obediently. At this time, Gohan had time to ask a question that he wanted to ask since he entered the door. Who is the person lying here? Gohan asked, pointing to the blonde girl who was sleeping on another bed. Brother, let me tell you. This is all Chinpin's doing. Chinpin is too heavy. He smashed other people's heads, so other people are relying on Chinpin. Gu-yun said with certainty. Nonsense. How is Chinpin heavy? Chinpin is still cute. He is a little light, okay? In order to prove that he didn't become heavier, Chinpin also jumped twice in the nursery bag. He almost bent Gohan's recovered waist. You see, when I jumped before, Gohan would fall. Now Gohan is fine. This proves that Chinpin not only didn't become heavier, but also became lighter. Chinpin hasn't eaten meat for thousands of years. How can he become heavier? Chinpin looked dissatisfied. Brother, you are so pitiful. Gu-yun touched Gohan's head. Why don't we throw this little fat pig into the garbage dump? We don't want her anymore. Okay, you two tell me what happened. Gohan smiled bitterly. Then he roughly figured out what had happened after Chinpin and Gu-yun explained it one after another. It turned out that this woman was Lu Anna. Lu Anna, who had been left in the Personal Terminal Administration Bureau by Chinpin, actually found the place where she had only lived for one night. Facing Lu Anna, who was giggling and complaining that she was hungry, Chinpin and Gu-yun met their nemesis. They could only save some money to feed her. When speaking of this, Chinpin squeezed out a few tears from his eyes. Chinpin is so pitiful. Chinpin could eat 2 mouthfuls of meat a day, but now he can only eat 1 mouthful. It was all taken away by her. Alas, this cute girl would only cry when it came to food. I'll send this woman to the hospital and see if I can restore her memory. Gohan had a way to deal with it. Although he didn't know whether her coma had anything to do with Chinpin's weight, there was no doubt that it had something to do with Chinpin. Anyway, he was not short of money now. He would be a good person and cure this woman's memory. Then he would let her find her family. Thinking of this, Gohan was about to wake Lu Anna up. When he walked closer, he was surprised to find that this Lu Anna was very unusual. Because Lu Anna actually had 5 scabbards hanging on her body. Qingpin and Gu Yun didn't understand and thought that Lu Anna just liked to cosplay as a swordsman. However, Gu Han could clearly see that these 5 scabbards were all scabbards used by real sword ladies. Among them, there was even a spirit sword grade scabbard that was worth thousands of gold coins. This was a scabbard that could only be used by a spirit sword grade sword lady. It was a scabbard that could allow a spirit sword grade sword lady to quickly restore her personal shield. P.S. Corrected a bug. Previously, it was written that Lu Anna had 6 scabbards on her body. The author is crazy. It should be 5 scabbards. Corrected. This thing was not rare in the game, but in reality, it was a very rare treasure. Even among the 3 swordsmen of the spiritual sword level, not one of them had this thing. An ordinary person with a scabbard of the spiritual sword level that was worth tens of thousands of gold coins swaggered through the market and cosplayed? Even if Gohan was beaten to death, Gohan wouldn't believe that there was such a person. If there was such a person, she would have been robbed long ago. So there was only one truth. This amnesiac woman was indeed a swordsman, and she was at least a swordsman of the spiritual sword level. Although a swordsman of the immortal sword level should have 5 scabbards, would an immortal sword level swordsman lose her memory? Gohan instinctively rejected this idea. He only thought that Lu Anna carried an extra scabbard on her out of interest. To be honest, there were many swordsmen like this. Some people even carried 6 scabbards on their bodies to experience the feeling of an emperor sword level swordsman. But if she was a swordsman of the spiritual sword level, this didn't make sense. Gohan had basically seen the photos of the swordsmen of the spiritual sword level in Yuzhong City, and there was no such person at all. Remembering that Qingpin once said that her genetic information couldn't be found in the Personal Terminal Administration Bureau, Gohan suspected that this person was likely to be a swordsman of other base cities. Since Lu Anna was a swordsman, Gohan couldn't deal with her indiscriminately. He had to hand her over to the Swordsman Service Center. Gohan patted her body, trying to wake her up. Maybe it was because she slept especially soundly after losing her memory. Gohan couldn't wake her up no matter what. It was Qingpin who jumped out of the nursery bag, pinched her nose, and waited for a few minutes before waking her up. Lu Shihua was very bored and waited outside the dormitory for almost an hour before he finally saw Gohan come out of the dormitory. It was just that there were a little too many people coming out. There was a little brat sitting in the pocket in front of Gohan's chest, another brat sitting on his head, and behind him was a blonde beauty with big breasts and a slender waist. Looking at her breasts, then looking at his own breasts, Lu Shihua suddenly felt a sense of loss. This world was too unfair. Stinky brother, is this your apprentice? Why is it another woman? Don't we have enough women in our family? Gu Yun pulled Gohan's hair with dissatisfaction. Gohan had just told them about Lu Shihua and told Qingpin and Gu Yun not to talk about him. Qingpin didn't have any reaction when she saw Lu Shihua. She closed her eyes comfortably and enjoyed the warmth of Gohan's arms. Let's go, you guys come with me. By the way, Shihua, please take care of Lu Anna. She has lost her memory. Don't let her run around. After Gohan finished speaking, he walked in the front with Qingpin and Gu Yun. Although Lu Shihua was full of questions, he could only follow Gohan and walk behind them, holding Lu Anna's hand. When they came out of the school gate, Gohan saw the electronic lock on the iron gate. He thought of something and asked curiously, "There is an electronic lock here. How did you two get in?" "We came in from the back door." Qingpin answered first and then complained to Gohan. Qingpin opened the door with her sword. Gu Yun is so lazy that she only knows how to command Qingpin. It turned out that these two people broke the school wall to get in. Indeed, for the sword lady, this kind of wall was nothing. "It smells so good. I seem to smell meat." Qingpin had the best nose. Not long after they walked, she was the first to smell the smell she had been dreaming of. Gohan touched Qingpin's head lovingly and said with a smile, "I know you haven't eaten meat for thousands of years. Today, I'll give you a good reward." Hooray! Qing Pin immediately cheered, and then desperately pulled Gohan's clothes in the nursery bag, thinking that it could make Gohan walk faster. Lu Shihua, who had been following Gohan, suddenly felt a little sad when she saw Gohan chatting with Qing Pin and Gu Yun all the way, but not saying a word to her. This was the first time that Lu Shihua had felt this feeling of being ignored. Lu Shihua lowered her head and thought about these trivial things. She didn't realize that they had arrived at the door of the building until her head hit the glass door. Lu Shihua looked up and saw the name, Chanel Pork Cuisine Chain of Luxury Stores. Lu Shihua had heard of this store before. Her neighbor, Auntie Wang, told her about it. One of Auntie Wang's relatives had once brought her here for a meal. Then, Auntie Wang bragged about it for a whole year. She praised the pork cuisine here to the point that it was unparalleled. Lu Shihua, who was still a child at that time, was extremely envious. She felt that the greatest achievement in her life was to have a meal here. She didn't expect that her wish would come true at this time. "What are you doing here? Come in." Gohan saw Lu Shihua standing at the door in a daze and grabbed her hand. Lu Shihua wanted to refuse, but when she felt the warmth of Gohan's palm, she didn't say a word and let Gohan pull her into the store. Chapter 653. In the Chanel store, it was usually crowded at this time of the day. However, less than 1/3 of the seats were occupied. This was all because of the aftermath of the last big attack. More than half of the population in the core area died, and the remaining people were not in the mood to enjoy food at this time. Moreover, it was said that this Chanel store was the disaster area during the big attack. Many people hid in the store and were finally attacked by Yuan Ko. They were eaten as Yuan Ko's food in the store. Actually, this was complete nonsense. If that was the case, this Chanel store wouldn't have opened so quickly. No matter what, it would have taken at least a few months to finish cleaning up the place. But no matter what, these things had a fatal impact on Chanel's business, so the business in the Chanel store was much worse. At this time, the diners were not in the mood to eat. They looked at a group of people at a big table, which was made up of 5 people. 1 man, 2 women, and 2 children. The 5 people ate in a strange way. The man even wore a mask when he ate, and even when he was eating, he did not take it off. This was not bad. The ugliest one was the blonde woman. She looked like she was in her 30s, but she ate the meat directly with her hands. She grabbed the greasy dongpa pork with her hands and sent it directly into her mouth. In the blink of an eye, she ate up the natural pork that was worth tens of thousands of yuan. The second ugliest one was the little girl with some baby fat. She sat directly at the table with chopsticks in her hands. One of her hands was holding braised pork, and the other was dongpa pork. She ate 1 bite at a time. She ate even faster than the blonde woman. In just a few minutes, the diners saw that the child had eaten at least 20 adult servings of natural pork. The last one was another child. She sat on a chair and did not wolf down the meat. Instead, she mashed the pork, picked up pieces the size of a fly, and sent them into her mouth. As she ate, she frowned, as if the delicious pork was very unpalatable. These 5 people were naturally Gohan, his sword lady, Lu Shihua, and Lu Anna. It had been a while since Gu Han had eaten meat, and she was a bit hungry, so she ate a lot more than usual. After she finished eating, she smiled and said to Lu Shihua, "Come, eat a bit more. It's my treat today." The pork was really delicious. Lu Shihua had never eaten such delicious food. Although she felt that she should not eat Gohan like this, she could not stop eating. However, once the pork entered his mouth, he couldn't stop. After eating 1 piece, he couldn't wait to eat another. When he knew that Lu Shihua's stomach really couldn't hold it anymore, he reluctantly put down his bowl and chopstick. On the other side, the poor man finally let out a satisfied burp. Although he had been eating pork for the same amount of time as Lu Shihua, the amount he ate was 100 times more than Lu Shihua. He was like a human meat grinder. When Mayun's cooking is better. People like Qing Pin, who put down the bowl and chopsticks and scolded the chef, were the most unkind. But to be honest, Gohan also thought that Wen Meiyun's cooking was more delicious. It seemed that he and Wen Meiyun had met for the first time in this Chanel restaurant. At that time, Gohan had just become an ancient sword wielder. Everything had just begun. When he thought of Wen Meiyun, he thought of home. When he thought of home, he began to miss his home. He didn't know if his home had been preserved during the invasion. "Okay, let's go home," Gohan said when he saw that everyone except Lu Anna had finished eating. Lu Shihua, who was next to Gohan, was a little anxious. "Master Military Governor? Let's go save little Een." "What's the hurry? The police station is not a dangerous place. They won't do anything to little Een." Gohan turned his head and looked into Lu Shihua's eyes very seriously. "Little Een doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He is too ignorant. It's good to let him suffer a little, lest he is easily taken advantage of by others in the future. But little Een has never been to the police station alone. I'm afraid that he will be afraid inside, and that Gohan might ask the police to teach little Een a lesson. I'm afraid that little Een will be hurt if we are late," Lu Shihua said nervously. Hearing Lu Shihua's words, Qing Pin and Gu Yun looked at Gohan at the same time. Their faces were strange. These little guys usually looked cute and silly, but why did they want to look so smart? "Oh, by the way, have you seen Gohan?" Gohan suddenly asked. "I remember that the TV has been broadcasting Gohan's missing person notices. You should know him." "No." Lu Shihua shook his head. "Who is interested in paying attention to this guy's appearance?" Gohan nodded. He finally understood why Lu Shihua didn't recognize him at the beginning. He waved his hand and signaled the waiter to pay the bill. "Hello, sir. You have eaten a total of 652 jin of pork. We will deduct the odd part and count it as 650 jin. You have to pay a total of 520,000 renminbi. The waiter stared at Gohan as she spoke. She was afraid that he would immediately run away after hearing the price. Moreover, she also noticed 520,000, not much. It's still fair. Gohan smiled. "Then please pay the bill." The waiter handed over the service terminal. According to common sense, Gohan only needed to touch his personal terminal on the service terminal to complete the transfer. But the problem was that Gohan didn't have a personal terminal. How could he use it to transfer the money? Of course, since Gohan dared to come here to eat, he naturally had a way to pay. Gohan pushed the service terminal away from him and then asked, "Where is your control computer here? Lend it to me." "Sir, the control computer is absolutely not allowed to be used by employees of our restaurant. You can't use our control computer." "I'm sorry." The waiter looked at Gohan with increasing vigilance. This person wouldn't want to destroy the restaurant, would he? "To be honest, if you let me use the control computer, I have the money to pay the bill. If you don't lend me the control computer, then I can only apologize." Gohan spread his hands and the waiter almost couldn't catch his breath. There was no other way. This kind of thing was no longer something that the waiter could handle. The waiter immediately called the manager over. The manager thought for a while and decided to agree to Gohan's request. However, he accompanied Gohan and monitored Gohan to prevent him from destroying the control computer. The manager saw Gohan walk in front of the control computer and then casually press a few times on the desktop. A software page that the manager had never seen before popped up. Then, this page could actually start the rarely used iris detection system on the computer. After detecting the iris of the person wearing the mask, the control computer automatically entered an interface that the manager never dared to imagine. This is the big background of Yuzhong Bank. The manager, who had worked in a bank for a period of time, recognized the origin of this interface at a glance. This turned out to be the official big background of Yuzhong Bank, the only bank in Yuzhong City. Gohan entered the number 520,000 in the box and then pressed it. His personal terminal received a message saying that 520,000 renminbi had been transferred from Yuzhong Bank to the official account of the restaurant. Okay, I've paid the money. I can go now. Gohan smiled and left the restaurant with his people, leaving the dumbfounded manager behind. Are you kidding me? Even the president of the bank doesn't have the right to use the back end of the bank to transfer money to an enterprise. Who the hell is this masked man? The manager muttered to himself. Suddenly, he shuddered. On the television, anyone who saw this kind of confidential matter would be silenced. Thinking of this, the manager immediately decided to shut his mouth forever. Until he died, he dared not tell anyone about what happened today. Sure enough, his home was finished. When Gohan returned to Sankingshan district, he saw that more than half of the buildings in the district had been turned into ruins. The building that Gohan lived in had also been flattened. There was a construction team cleaning up the rest of the ruins. It seemed that the ruins of Gohan's home had been cleaned up by this construction team. Gohan looked at this piece of flat land and actually felt a little sad. He shook his head and cleared these emotions from his mind. Then, he quickly left the place with the confused Lu Shihua and the others. Since his original home was gone, he would find a new one. According to the rules of the Sword Committee, ancient sword and treasure sword level sword-bearers lived in a house of more than 200 square meters. After becoming a famous sword level sword-bearer, they could ask the Sword Committee for a house of more than 1,000 square meters that took up an entire floor. Originally, Gohan didn't want to move, but now he had no choice but to move. If he wanted to get a new house, he would have to go to the Sword-Bearers Service Center to replace his personal terminal. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to apply for a new house through the Sword Committee's procedures. Therefore, Gohan took Lu Shihua and the others to the temporary Sword-Bearers Service Center in the normal district. As soon as they arrived at the entrance of the center, Gohan saw a group of people in mourning clothes holding white banners with the words, "Return my father's life. Return my father's justice. Please bring the murderous demon Gohan to justice," and so on. Gohan naturally guessed that these were the family members of the unlucky bastard that he had beheaded. Compared to the tears that streamed down their faces on the television, although these people were kneeling, their faces were full of smiles. The unlucky son was actually using his personal terminal to project the game interface. He was playing the game, and as he played, he even muttered something like, "addicted to damage output, watching others die," and so on. Gohan quietly took out the camera from his dimensional pocket and recorded this scene. Then, he brought everyone into the temporary Sword-Bearers Service Center. Chapter 654. As soon as Gohan entered the temporary Sword-Bearers Service Center, he walked toward the Special Sword-Bearers Area sign. In the temporary Sword-Bearers Service Center, other than a small area for normal people to conduct synchronization experiments, the rest of the area was off-limits to non-sword-bearers. The group of people outside had been causing a ruckus these few days, so the security inside the temporary Sword-Bearers Service Center was much stricter than usual. "Who are you? Please show me your Sword-Bearer's personal terminal, or you will not be allowed to enter." There were 2 policemen guarding the entrance. Of course, the honorable sword-bearers would not do such a thing. If normal people caused trouble, the policemen with guns would be enough. If it was a sword-bearer causing trouble, the guards were just a waste of time. There would naturally be sword-bearers in the center to deal with these stupid people. These guards were all looking at the personal terminal of the people who attempted to enter. If it was a personal terminal of a sword-bearer, they would naturally not stop it, even if it was a group of people behind them. However, if normal people tried to enter, these policemen would not hesitate to stop them. "If you can't show us your sword-bearer's personal terminal, we will have to take you back to the police station. Wearing a mask and sneaking around, we suspect that you are trying to destroy the temporary Sword-Bearers Service Center," the policeman on guard said confidently. In their eyes, Gohan was too suspicious. Not only did he not have a sword-bearer's personal terminal, but there were also 2 children hanging behind him. Although the blonde woman behind him had 5 scabbards hanging on her, these 5 scabbards were the funniest. What kind of joke was this? Did she think she was an immortal sword-bearer with a silly look on her face? This group of people was too suspicious. They had to be taken down immediately. The 2 policemen were about to give the order when Gohan had no choice but to drag Chinpin, who had fallen asleep in the baby pouch, out. He grabbed her neck and turned Chinpin into Chinpin's sword. "Can this prove my identity?" Gohan asked as he placed Chinpin's sword in front of the 2 policemen. The 2 policemen wiped the cold sweat off their forehead. Good Lord, did the swordsman not bring his personal terminal to play tricks on them? "Please come in." The 2 policemen could only helplessly lower their heads and made a gesture of invitation. "You did the right thing. It was my mistake." Gohan helped the 2 policemen up, patted their shoulders and said with a smile, "You guys are loyal to your duty. You don't have to bend down, you are also heroes." "Thank you." The 2 policemen immediately felt their noses sour, and their hearts were filled with emotion. Their eyes actually became a little watery, and their impression of Gohan also rose sharply. "So this child is the military governor's sword mistress," I thought. Lu Shihua let out a huge sigh of relief. She thought Chinpin was the military governor's daughter, which was why the military governor took such good care of her and spoiled her so much. Thinking of these things made her heart ache. Lu Shihua originally thought that Gohan would go to the Swordsman's Service Center to apply for a new personal terminal, but she didn't expect to follow Gohan all the way to the top floor of the temporary service center. There were no other departments on the top floor, only a signboard hanging on the door. Office of the Chairman of the Sword Committee. "Master, we went the wrong way. The place to apply for a personal terminal is not here." Lu Shihua pulled Gohan's sleeve and whispered. "Yes, it's here." Gohan smiled, ignoring Lu Shihua's shocked face, and went straight to the office door. Seeing this scene, Lu Shihua was frightened. This was the office of the supreme leader of Yuzhong City. How could the military governor open the door so easily? He should at least knock on the door. Gohan had no choice but to go straight in. Lu Shihua could only follow. The office was actually 2 floors. Behind this door was the living room for receiving guests. There were sofas, coffee tables, and other things. There was another door inside, which was Lu Lei's office. "Who is it? Don't you know the rules? You came in without knocking. Do you think I'm not in the office?" Lu Lei's angry voice came from the door. Lu Shihua trembled. "Is this the voice of the big boss of Yuzhong City? It's too scary." Lu Shihua's feeling was just like how ordinary people felt when they saw Shida. "Master, it's me, your disciple." Gohan bowed deeply towards the door and said solemnly. Bang! The door inside was violently opened. Lu Lei, with a face full of annoyance and surprise, threw a sword chi at Gohan's head. Don't worry, this was not a sword chi that could kill, but a sword chi that was as round as a hammer. Lu Lei's sword chi hit Gohan's head unceremoniously and said, "Get in here," and then disappeared at the door. "You sit outside and wait for my news." Gohan asked Lu Shihua to look after Lu Anna and the others, and then he went into the office. In the office, Gohan suffered inhumane abuse. Lu Lei kept patting Gohan's shoulder with more than a ton of force until half of Gohan's shoulder was swollen. Then Lu Lei smiled with satisfaction and sat back in the chair. "Tell me, where have you been hiding for the past 10 days? Why did you suddenly come to find me?" Lu Lei asked with satisfaction. "I can't tell you where I'm hiding, but Master, I'm looking for you to ask you for a house. My home is gone, so you have to make up for it." Although his shoulder was hurting badly, Gohan still said without changing his expression, "That's easy. Now all the sword-bearers who lost their houses have been relocated to Lushan district. I'll arrange a house for you there." Lu Lei said carelessly, "This, Master. I'm a famous sword-bearer now, and I should be able to get a big house." Gohan said again, "A famous sword-bearer?" Lu Lei was shocked. He put his hand on Gohan's zifu and felt it. Sure enough, he felt the sword essence. This was the sword essence of a famous sword bearer. His apprentice had really become a famous sword bearer. Good apprentice, it hasn't been 3 months, but you've already become a famous sword bearer. Even if you've eaten the sword essence oral solution in the game, your speed can't be so fast. Lu Lei said with surprise. He didn't know that he had accidentally revealed the origin of Gohan's sword essence, which scared Gohan so much that his expression didn't change. Yes, I didn't use the wrong words. Good. Good. Suddenly, Lu Lei burst into laughter. Yesterday, those old fogies were still saying that there had never been a sword pavilion master at the treasure sword rank. Now you're a famous sword rank swordsman. There have only been 2 sword pavilion masters at the famous sword rank since ancient times. Besides, you were just an ordinary person 3 months ago. This kind of talent is rare since ancient times. Let's see what else they can say. It seemed that Di Shan's people had given Lu Lei a lot of pressure recently. That was why he was so happy after hearing that Gohan had become a famous sword bearer. Obviously, this made Lu Lei more confident. Master, what are those people doing now? Had the envoy of the City of London arrived? Your health is more important. Why don't you let me handle these things? Gohan was worried that Lu Lei's body couldn't handle so many things. It's okay. Master has been through all kinds of storms. This kind of conspiracy is not a big deal. However, it's strange about the special envoy from London. It's been so long, but she still hasn't come. A few days ago, London sent a letter asking about her. It seems that they have also lost contact with the special envoy, Lu Lei said strangely. What's so strange about that? On the way, they crossed the sea and went through Yuan Ko's territory. It's normal for the special envoy to be killed by Yuan Ko on the way. If she's really dead, then we won't have so much trouble. Gohan showed his cunning side. What are you talking about? This special envoy is a fairy sword bearer. How could she be killed on the way? If she's really dead, there's nothing to be happy about. We still have a few fairy sword bearers left. We can't sacrifice this kind of fighting force anymore. Lu Lei knocked on Gohan's shoulder again. Gohan decisively shut his mouth. Since you're back, don't show yourself. The longer you hide, the better it will be for us. Do you understand? Lu Lei said again. Of course I can continue to hide, but I'm afraid that Di Shan's people will do something desperate. Gohan said worriedly. Master, do you know what happened this morning? What happened? Is it about the police arresting people? Why? Do you think I did something wrong and shouldn't have arrested them? Lu Lei glanced at Gohan and asked meaningfully. Master, did you ask people to do that? I thought it was Di Shan's people arresting themselves for fun. Gohan said while twitching his mouth. You little devil, you can even see through this. Lu Lei kicked Gohan's leg. That's right, I'm not stupid enough to do such a thing that would incur the wrath of the heavens. Those old fellas used my name to do such a thing. They just want to smear your name with another layer of ink so that you will never be able to rise again. Disciple doesn't care about tarnishing my reputation, but Master, once this person is caught, it won't be as simple as tarnishing my reputation. The entire sword bearers will be tarnished, and if we allow these people to control the media to spread the news, I'm afraid that it won't just be me, but the entire sword bearers. This will cause a large-scale conflict, and their actions will hurt themselves. Gohan said helplessly. Humph. Let's see who will be the unlucky one then. Master, Disciple has a plan. Gohan moved closer to Lu Lei's ear and whispered, causing Lu Lei's eyes to smile. Chapter 655. Then Gohan and Lu Lei discussed a whole set of follow-up measures. Finally, Gohan showed a long-lost smile and took a sip of tea with satisfaction. Lu Lei seemed to think of something, put down the teapot and said, Good disciple, you seem to have brought some people here just now. Who did you bring? How can you bring them to my office casually? Lu Lei said with some dissatisfaction. 2 of them are my sword maidens, and I have to take them with me. As for the other 2, one is your disciple's disciple, and the other is someone you have to deal with, Guhan said with a smile. Disciple's disciple. I actually have a disciple's disciple. Lu Lei was taken aback and looked at Guhan unhappily. I accepted you as my disciple when I was more than 80 years old. You are less than 20 years old, and you have also accepted a disciple. Why are you so anxious? Are you waiting for death? Do you have to accept a disciple when you are about to die? What kind of concept is this? Guhan was unable to complain about Lu Lei's concept and could only say, no, this disciple's talent is too good. If I don't accept him as your disciple's disciple, I'm afraid he will be taken away by others. What talent? Is it better than the talent of your precious disciple? Lu Lei said disdainfully, as if his disciple was the best in the world. As a result, when Guhan told Lu Lei about Lu Shihua's aptitude and ability, Lu Lei was so jealous that his face suddenly turned red, and he kicked Guhan again. Such a good seedling, it's a pity to give it to you. Let me accept another disciple. How good it will be for you to have one more junior sister, you brat. Lu Shihua sat quietly on the sofa with Lu Anna, secretly guessing what had happened in the room. On the other side, the 2 troublemakers, Qing Pin and Gu Yun, used the living room as their playground, jumping around on the sofa, and 2 or 3 teapots and teacups were broken. These were authentic Ru kiln imitations. Although Lu Shihua didn't know much about porcelain, looking at the fragments on the ground, he felt distressed. If he sold them, how much money would they be worth? Shihua, bring Anna in. Suddenly, Guhan's voice came from the room. Lu Shihua stood up nervously, tidied up his clothes, and tried to look elegant and tidy. Then he took the silly Lu Anna and walked into Lu Lei's office. This was the first time Lu Shihua had seen the big boss of Yuzhong City with his own eyes. His first impression was that this boss was very amiable. He looked at Lu Shihua with a kind gaze, as if he was looking at his granddaughter. As soon as they met, Lu Shihua was very touched. What Lu Shihua didn't know was that Lu Lei was feeling bitter in his heart. Such a good seedling had actually turned his disciple into his grand disciple. It was truly a pity. After Lu Lei warmed up Lu Shihua, he turned his attention to Lu Anna. This is the sword wielder who lost his memory. Why do I find it so familiar? Lu Lei said to himself. Suddenly, he patted his head and quickly opened his personal terminal. He clicked a few times and projected an account card. Guhan fixed his eyes on it and found that it was a photo of Lu Anna. In this photo, Lu Anna was valiant and dignified, just like a warrior. She was completely different from the silly Lu Anna now. More importantly, although Lu Anna was full of spirit in the photo, she was old with wrinkles. She was at least in her 50s. But now Lu Anna looked at most in her 30s, much younger than the Lu Anna in the photo. Is this a photo of Lu Anna's mother? Guhan asked subconsciously. No. Lu Lei shook his head with a solemn look, and then gestured to Lu Shihua. Guhan understood. He knew that Lu Lei had something important to tell him alone, so he took Lu Shihua back to the reception room and told her to wait for a while. She is the special envoy of the city of London. When only Guhan, Lu Lei, and Lu Anna were left in the room, Lu Lei said solemnly. The photo just now was sent to me by the city of London. She is John Anna, the 3rd sword wielder of the city of London who became a fairy sword wielder last year. The name and the photo are all right. There can't be any mistake. She is the special envoy of the city of London. Even Guhan did not think of this, but after it was pointed out, he instantly understood. However, if Lu Anna was the special envoy of the city of London, then many problems could be explained. Because Lu Anna was from the city of London, there was no genetic information about her in Yuzhong City. Because she was a sword wielder at the fairy sword wielder level, she would naturally wear 5 scabbards. And according to what Qin Pin said, The time when Lu Anna was found was the time when the special envoy of the City of London was about to arrive. Everything was right. When you found her, she was like this. Lu Lei carefully observed Lu Anna's situation, pressed his hand on Lu Anna's Zifu mountain, felt the situation inside her Zifu mountain, and judged. Her sword essence is very chaotic, and many of her meridians seem to be broken. It seems that she has suffered a very serious injury to become like this. And her 5 scabbards are all empty, and I can't see any sword ladies. This situation can only happen when she has experienced a very fierce battle and all the sword ladies are broken. On the way to Yuzhang City, she must have met some Yuan Ko and was defeated. Relying on the desperate resistance of the sword ladies, she opened the void door and escaped into Yuzhang City. In a few words, Lu Lei roughly guessed Lu Anna's situation based on his rich experience. But Master, Lu Anna is a sword wielder at the fairy sword wielder level. To break all the sword ladies of the fairy sword wielder level and make her lose her memory, I'm afraid only a flood level or a desolation level Yuan Ko can do it, right? Lu Lei sighed, it can't be wrong. She became like this because she fought with a flood level Yuan Ko. Since she could escape into Yuzhang City through the void door, the place of the battle must be near Yuzhang City. Is there a flood level Yuan Ko wandering around Yuzhang City? Lu Lei's words made Gohan's hair stand on end. If there was really a flood level Yuan Ko wandering around Yuzhang City, wouldn't it be possible for him to launch an attack on Yuzhang City at any time? Yuzhang City might not be in danger with the help of the dimensional shield, but the sword wielder fighting outside Yuzhang City would be in great danger. No, I can't turn a blind eye to this matter. I must immediately ask the sword wielder outside Yuzhang City to shrink their activity range, and at the same time, send a reconnaissance team to search the first battle scene to see if they can find traces of Lu Anna's battle and analyze the specific situation. Brat, if you have anything else to say, just say it and leave here. I have no time to entertain you, Lu Lei said in a hurry. Well, Master, I don't have anything else to say. It's just that my personal terminal was broken during the battle. Can you give me another one? It's too inconvenient without that thing, and there's also the problem of my house. Gohan told him his current 2 problems. This is for you. I've already prepared it for you. Even if it's not broken, you have to get a new personal terminal. Lu Lei took out a brand new personal terminal from his dimensional pocket and handed it to Gohan. Gohan looked at it carefully and found that it was different from the personal terminals of ordinary people and the personal terminals of the sword wielder. This personal terminal was pure gold and looked high-end and elegant. This is the personal terminal of the master of the sword Garrett. As long as you put it into your skin, it will be automatically bound to you. I've had this thing for 10 years, and now it's finally time to give it away, Lu Lei said with emotion. After thinking for a while, he added, remember, you'd better not use it in public. You're still missing now, understand? Yes, Master. Gohan nodded. As for your house, it's at this address. I've already handed over the ownership. Now it's already your house. You can move in at any time. Lu Lei sent the information about the new house to Gohan. Gohan looked at the address and saw Mount D Feng House. Seeing the address of Mount D Feng, Gohan was obviously stunned. What's wrong? Are you afraid of being under the enemy's nose? Lu Lei asked in a strange tone. No, I just think it's interesting. Gohan smiled. Master, let's make a bet. I promise that unless I show up, the people of Mount D Feng will never find out that I'm under their nose. I don't want to bet with you. Okay, you can get out. Lu Lei scolded. I'm so busy. Goodbye, Master. Gohan bowed and was ready to leave. Wait. When Gohan's foot was half out of the door, he heard Lu Lei shout, Take this person away. Why does she stay here? I don't have time to take care of her. But Master, she is. After knowing that Lu Anna was a sword wielder of the fairy sword realm, Gohan did not want to provoke her anymore. This kind of thing could not be good. Whoever found her should take care of her. She has nothing to do with me. I'm so busy. How can I have time to take care of a stupid woman? Lu Lei rolled his eyes at Guhan. But she's our trump card now. You can't tell anyone else about her identity except me. London City has been playing tricks on us. This time, I'm going to make the Dragon Lion Sword Emperor beg me. I'm going to make him owe Yuzhang City a favor. Before I have a detailed plan, you're responsible for taking care of her. Well, since Lu Lei had said so, what else could Guhan do? He could only take this sword wielder of the fairy sword realm he picked up and go to his new home. Chapter 656. Mount Emperor had a different name in every base city, but every base city definitely had a place like this. Mount Emperor was where all the Emperor's sword level sword holders lived. At the same time, it was where the Spirit sword level sword holders and the Fairy sword level sword holders lived. However, only the current Spirit sword level sword holders could live in Mount Emperor. Once a Spirit sword level sword holder died, his family would be forced to leave Mount Emperor and live in the core area where the famous sword level sword holders live. If there was no new famous sword level sword holder in 3 generations, then they would be arranged to live in a normal house. Mount Emperor in Yuzhang City was a small hill. At the foot of the hill, there were rows of standalone villas. As for the hillside and the top of the hill, that was the Emperor's sword level family territory. Every family had 10 hectares of land, and they could decorate it however they wanted. Emperor's sword level families had their own pride. They would never allow their family's architectural style to be similar to other families. Therefore, the Emperor's sword level families had their own unique architectural style. They had all kinds of architectural styles. They could even hold an architectural exhibition. Originally, Guhan was only a famous sword level sword holder, so he did not have the right to live in Mount Emperor. However, Guhan was the sword tower master. Therefore, Lu Lei still arranged a standalone building for Guhan in Mount Emperor called Phoenix House for Guhan to live in. It was said that there used to be an Emperor sword level sword holder living in Phoenix House. However, after he ascended to the throne, he moved to the Imperial Palace in Yuzhang City. As for whether this was true, only God knew. Ding dong! His personal terminal touched the scanner and the door to Mount Emperor opened. The screen at the entrance showed a bunch of messy code. Under normal circumstances, it should show Guhan's name. Obviously, this was because of Lu Lei's setting. He really did not want Guhan to expose his identity. Phoenix House was not far from the door. After walking slowly for less than 5 minutes, he saw the standalone building. The buildings on Mount D were all in the classic style of China. They were made of pure redwood, showing the nobility of these buildings. Lu Shihua looked at the small building like Granny Lu entering the Grand View Garden. The entire building had a total of 5 floors. The first floor was 300 square meters, the second, third, and fourth floors were 266 square meters, and the top floor, the 5th floor, was only 150 square meters. The Phoenix House had already been renovated in advance, and all the household appliances and daily necessities were ready. Apart from the kitchen and bathroom, the first floor was a huge living room. A 200-inch Super TV hung on the wall like a monster. All the furniture was made of real leather and covered with extremely comfortable carpet. The crystal chandelier shone brightly even though it was not turned on. This was only the first floor. The entire second floor was a cultivation room equipped with all kinds of cultivation tools. On the third floor, there were 4 bedrooms, a recreation room, and a home cinema. There were also 4 bedrooms on the 4th floor, as well as a super master bedroom. This master bedroom was as large as 100 square meters, and the 5-meter by 5-meter square bed was also amazing. Sleeping in such a room would make people panic. What was even more amazing was that the ceiling of the master bedroom was made of glass, and through the glass, one could see the clear water above. That's right, the fifth floor was an entire floor with a swimming pool and a bathroom. It could be used as both a bathroom and a swimming pool. The owner of the master bedroom under the swimming pool could hear the beautiful sounds of the people swimming. The television in the master bedroom was attached with the entire Phoenix house's surveillance system, and one could see every movement in the Phoenix house. Next to the master bedroom was the quantum transmission room, which was used to quickly move around the city. However, since the Great Invasion, the entire quantum transmission room had been shut down by the Sword Commission. Before they found a way to prevent Yuan Ko from using the quantum transmission room to attack Yuzhong City again, the quantum transmission room would be shut down forever. Looking at the home appliances that she had only seen on television, as well as the dazzling variety of rooms and configurations, Lu Shihua felt as if she and these sword-bearers were not living on the same earth. These were all things that Lu Shihua had never imagined. She could not imagine that one day she would live in such a house. Is this the difference between a sword-bearer and an ordinary person? Lu Shihua could not help but think of what Gohan had said to her on the way here. Her heart twitched with uneasiness and resistance. She instinctively wanted to escape, but before she could move, Gohan grabbed her arm. "You can live here, if you want me to be little Een." Gohan's words made it impossible for Lu Shihua to refuse. She could only let Gohan manipulate her. There were a total of 9 bedrooms in the Phoenix house, and the master bedroom was naturally Gohan's. Originally, Gohan wanted Qinpin and Gu Yun to live in the other 2 bedrooms on the 4th floor, but Qinpin and Gu Yun directly used the Great Rogue method. It was as if they were planted on Gohan's big bed, and they refused to leave no matter what. Helpless, Gohan could only acquiesce to these 2 cute girls living with him. However, Gohan still reserved 2 bedrooms for them. The remaining 2 bedrooms on the 4th floor seemed to be prepared for Etian and Juzi. Ever since Gohan left Lu Shihua's house, he had not let Juzi out. Only now did he release Juzi from her sword. Only then did Qinpin and Gu Yun realize that they had another sister. "Wah, Juzi, long time no see." Unexpectedly, as soon as Juzi appeared, Gu Yun ran to Juzi's side in a very familiar manner. Juzi also very naturally hugged Gu Yun, as if the 2 of them knew each other. As for Qinpin, he sniffed his nose and complained in a low voice, "Smelly golden crow's smell, so annoying." He ignored Juzi and treated her as if she did not exist. There seemed to be quite a bit of conflict between the 2 of them. Gohan noticed Qinpin's reaction, remembered it, and then asked Gu Yun, "Do you know each other?" "Yes. According to Yu Chang's memory, when she was still a sword, we lived together for a period of time. We were the best of friends," Gu Yun said happily. Gu Yun had inherited both Gu Yun and Yu Chang's memory, so she was very clear about Yu Chang's past. The memories of the ancient era were also very clear. This was a bit strange, because most of the sword maidens seemed to have forgotten their memories of being swords in the ancient era. Only a small portion of them still remembered these memories, but the sword maidens by Gohan's side all seemed to have very deep memories of the ancient era. Because Juzi also had these memories, and because she hugged Gu Yun very intimately, she even smiled. This was definitely not something a sword maiden like Juzi could fake. But to be reasonable, the Juzi sword's master was Moz, and the Yu Chang sword's master was Wu Qinghelu. These 2 people were separated by about 100 years, and yet they were able to become friends. This was a very miraculous thing. Only the heavens knew what happened between them back then. "Juzi, you can stay in this room." Unexpectedly, Gohan did not arrange for Juzi's room to be on the 4th floor like the other sword maidens. Instead, he arranged for her to be on the 3rd floor. There was clearly an empty room on the 4th floor. "Yes." Juzi agreed without any dissatisfaction. This was her master's order, and she would unconditionally obey. But this small detail fell into Gu Yun and Lu Shihua's eyes. They instinctively felt that this Juzi and Gohan were not close. On the contrary, there seemed to be a thick layer between them. Juzi was heartless, and she strictly carried out every one of Gohan's orders. She shouldn't have any barrier between her and Gohan. This barrier came entirely from Gohan himself. It was as if Gohan had not yet treated Juzi as his sword maiden. Lu Shihua instinctively thought of the military governor's sword maiden in the game, Yu Wangjian. He thought of the relationship between Yu Wangjian and the military governor, which was like a couple. He seemed to have caught something in his heart. Lu Shihua's room was also arranged on the third floor, next to Juzi's. Lu Anna lived with Lu Shihua. Because this woman had completely lost her IQ, Gohan was not at ease to let her live alone. Lu Shihua could only trouble Lu Shihua to take care of her. Lu Shihua had no objection to this. On the contrary, if he could do something for Gohan, he could live with a peace of mind. After the rooms were assigned, Lu Shihua asked to go back to his home to pack some clothes. Qing Pin and Gu Yun ran to the top floor to swim. Only Lu Anna was watching TV in the living room with a silly smile. Gohan suddenly felt that this home was still lacking a little vitality. At least there was one less maid who could wash and cook for him. Where is Wen Meiyun? Did she die in the Great Attack? If Wen Meiyun died, Gohan would still be a little distressed. After all, he was used to people. Gohan was not the kind of person who liked the new and got tired of the old. With the personal terminal of the Sword Pavilion's Pavilion Master, Gohan could use a lot of authority. For example, he could look up an ordinary person's information and current situation. For an ordinary swordsman, it would be a complicated process, but for Gohan, it was just a matter of thought. He entered Wen Meiyun's name, and soon, Wen Meiyun's current situation appeared in front of Gohan. Wen Meiyun's current situation was not very good. According to the information, both of her legs had been eaten by Yuan Yen. More than half of her arm was also gone. When she was discovered, she was buried in a pile of rubble and was on the verge of death. Then the rescue team gave Wen Meiyun the most basic treatment and threw her into the shelter. Although medicine could restore limbs, Wen Meiyun obviously did not have so much money, so she could only rely on the most basic conditions to maintain her life in the shelter, living a disabled life. Alas, it's another troublesome thing. Gohan sighed. He originally wanted to enter the game, but now he could only take the bus to the shelter. Chapter 657. In the shelter, Wen Meiyun had a worried look on her face. She stared blankly at the lights in the distance. Her originally slender and plump thighs had completely disappeared. Her buttocks were tightly bound by bandages. Although there were several layers of bandages, the blood that seeped out from the inside had already dyed the bandages dark red. Wen Meiyun's right arm was also missing. It was also wrapped in a bloody bandage. There were people like Wen Meiyun everywhere in the shelter. Some of them were even more miserable than Wen Meiyun, such as the man lying on the bed next to Wen Meiyun. Everything below his heart was gone. He relied on the artificial internal circulation system to sustain his life. Originally, there was no need to save such a person. However, the new chairman of the council expressed that he would not give up on a living person. Therefore, this man had to painfully maintain his identity. When Meiyun remembered that during the first few days when this man was living in the shelter, various officials would come to inspect the place with reporters and cameras. They would stand beside this man and say a few words of comfort, pat his shoulder, say a few words of encouragement, and leave some seemingly good nutrition for him. After that, they never appeared again. Later on, probably because the popularity of this incident had died down, the officials also stopped coming to show off. This man could only rely on moans to show that he was still alive. Suddenly, when Meiyun found that the man's arm moved, his hand slowly groped on the table beside him. Finally, his hand touched a shriveled apple on the table. On this apple, there was a fruit knife inserted into it. This was the apple left by an official who came to comfort him. This official kindly peeled half of the apple for him. When he was about to feed the man, he was stopped by the nurse. The reason was simple. This man had lost his stomach. For the sake of treatment, his esophagus had been completely sealed. Feeding him an apple wouldn't have any effect at all. Instead, it would accumulate in his esophagus and eventually turn into a pile of rotten things. Hearing this, the official smiled embarrassedly and left the apple on the table. He didn't take it away. Now, the apple had completely rotted. The original yellow flesh had turned black, just like when Mayun's mood. The man finally touched the apple. Then, he grabbed the fruit knife on the apple and removed the fruit knife with difficulty. Then, without hesitation, he cut off the rubber tube hanging on his body. This was the tube that connected the artificial internal circulation system to his body. The man's blood flowed continuously in it, and it was equivalent to the man's aorta. The man had cut the rubber tube, which meant that he had given up on living. Without the help of the artificial internal circulation system, he would die from excessive blood loss in less than 5 minutes. In the end, he succeeded. The rubber tube broke, and the blood inside flowed out. In addition to Wen Meiyun, there were many people who saw this. However, the patients around them did not make a sound. They did not say a word or remind the doctors. Even when 2 caregivers passed by, they only showed a slight look of pity on their faces. Then, they instantly became much more relaxed. The patients didn't say anything because they understood the man's pain. It was better to die than to live like this. The 2 caregivers didn't say anything because it was very troublesome to take care of this man. If he died, these caregivers would be much more relaxed. In such silence, the man died. However, before he died, Wen Meiyun seemed to hear a gloomy laughter from hell. Then, the man waved his hand powerlessly, and the fruit knife in his hand flew out and finally fell on Wen Meiyun's bed. The shelter controlled knives. Except for doctors, no one was allowed to touch knives. However, this apple was an accident. For a few days, no one actually noticed this apple, so the fruit knife luckily escaped the fate of being confiscated. Now that the fruit knife was on Wen Meiyun's bed, Wen Meiyun felt that this was her fate. Fate was telling her that she did not need to live anymore. Perhaps she could still struggle on for a dozen or even a few decades, but what was the point of that? Other than being a burden to Xiaoya, what else could she do? She could not drag Xiaoya's future down. As long as she died, Xiaoya would be free. Every mother's thoughts were pitifully innocent. Wen Meiyun just didn't want to be a burden to Long Xiaoya, so she wanted to end her life. Even if she was still full of longing for life. With that thought, Wen Meiyun grabbed the fruit knife on the bed and wanted to commit suicide. However, she was just a woman. In such a short time, she actually couldn't think of how to die. Don't think that suicide is a very easy thing. You can just cut your neck, but that must be done in a hidden place with no one around. Now that Wen Meiyun was really in a shelter with so many people, if she committed suicide, there would probably be people coming to save her immediately. She was not like that man. For that man, death was a kind of happiness, so others would not stop him. But Wen Meiyun was different. First, it was because her injury was not to the extent that death was better than living. Second, it was because she was a beautiful woman. Even if her legs and hands were broken, it wouldn't change this. The man next to her still had some desire for her, so how could he let her die? If he saw her commit suicide, he would definitely save her to increase his favorability. So after thinking for a while, even with the fruit knife in her hand, Wen Meiyun couldn't think of a way to completely kill herself. Why don't I cut my wrist under the quilt and commit suicide? After thinking for a while, Wen Meiyun thought of a good way, which was to commit suicide by cutting her wrist. As long as she hid her wrist under the quilt and pretended to be asleep, no one would notice her abnormality. But on second thought, this was not realistic. She only had one hand and the fruit knife was not big. How could she use her left hand to cut her wrist? Ordinary people could not do this at all. So when Meiyun changed her mind and decided to cut her stomach, it was just that it would be a little too ugly to die like this. Wen Meiyun, you are about to die. Why do you care if it's ugly or not? Wen Meiyun laughed at herself. She used the hand holding the fruit knife under the quilt and used it to cut her stomach. The facial features on her face twisted, and then she suddenly revealed a somewhat happy smile. She closed her eyes, looking no different from sleeping. "Mom, are you feeling better?" At this time, Long Xiaoya, who had a dirty face and messy hair, walked in with a laundry basin. She had just washed and dried her mother's clothes, and then she was about to change her mother's dressing, but she found her mother lying on the bed with a smile on her face and sleeping soundly. She couldn't bear to disturb her and wanted to let her sleep a little longer. She didn't know that her mother's stomach had already bloomed, and there was a pool of blood under the quilt. In a few minutes she would die completely. Long Xiaoya had experienced a lot in the past few days. She didn't rest at all today. She couldn't help but lie on the bed and prepare to sleep. Just as she closed her eyes, she felt that someone was standing behind her. Long Xiaoya raised her head in confusion and saw a man with a red mask standing behind her. "Who are you? Are you looking for someone? I know these uncles, aunties, and aunties. I can help you find them." Long Xiaoya thought that this person was looking for her relatives, but she was very strange. Why did he wear a mask? Was he stupid? "You are Long Xiaoya Wenmeiyun's daughter?" This person's voice was very pleasant. "Are you looking for us? Are you Mom's friend?" Only then did Long Xiaoya realize that this person was actually looking for her and her daughter. However, after so many days, other than Auntie Guogua and a graceful and capable middle-aged woman who Long Xiaoya had never seen before, no one else had come to see her and her daughter. In Long Xiaoya's memory, she couldn't remember the existence of any relatives. Why was this man looking for her and her daughter? "She's so badly injured." This masked man was naturally Gohan. He sighed and said, "Your mother is the maid of the sword-bearer, right? You can go to the sword committee. They will give you better care." "Then our sword-bearer must be alive." Long Xiaoya's eyes were dim. "The TV has been broadcasting his missing person notice for more than 10 days. Mom said that he is most likely dead. Will the sword committee care about Mom? If Mom can be pregnant with that person?" Long Xiaoya only closed her mouth when she said this. She almost said what was in her heart. If she said it out, it would be so embarrassing. Which woman would want her mother to be pregnant with another man's flesh and blood? Even if this Gohan is dead, according to the rules of the maid center, as long as the maid has never been touched, she can re-enter the maid service center and find a new master. Your mother is the number one in the maid school. The maid service center will not abandon your mother. Gohan said again. "Why are you so clear about these things? I just found out about it." Long Xiaoya pouted. "My mother said that Master Gohan treats her very well. She doesn't want to change masters anymore. She will be Gohan's maid for the rest of her life. Even if she dies, it's her fate. She won't blame anyone." Gohan sighed. Long Xiaoya didn't know him, so she probably wouldn't lie to him. She also wouldn't give up the benefits of saving her mother and not return to the maid service center. It seemed that this Wenmeiyun really recognized him as her master and was loyal to him. Forget it. Gohan originally wanted to save her. Now that he saw that she was so loyal to him, he was even more unwilling to let her die. When Gohan was about to order someone to take her to the hospital, suddenly, a stream of red seeped out from the bedsheet that was covered by the quilt. When Gohan saw it, his expression changed drastically. He directly lifted the quilt that covered Wenmeiyun's body. "What are you doing? What do you want to do to my mother, you pervert?" Long Xiaoya jumped up angrily and reached out to hit Gohan, but Gohan grabbed her hand. Just as she was about to break free, she heard Gohan say, "Don't waste time. Call the doctor over." Chapter 658. Long Xiaoya was stunned at first, then looked at her mother, only to find that there was a wound more than 10 centimeters deep on her mother's belly. Blood kept flowing out of the wound, soaking the entire bedsheet red. If it weren't for Gohan's timely discovery, her mother would have died here. "I'll go now." Long Xiaoya jumped up in shock and immediately went to find a doctor. After a while, a doctor was forcibly pulled over by Long Xiaoya. Seeing Wen Meiyun's stomach full of blood, the doctor shook his head directly, showing a look of pity. Then, he felt her pulse and was even more certain. He said, "There's no pulse. You'd better restrain your grief and cremate her quickly." "No. No way. My mother will be fine. She can still be saved." When Long Xiaoya heard the doctor's words, she quickly knelt on the ground, hugged the doctor's thigh, and cried, "Doctor, please do a good deed and save my mother. I'll be your woman. I can even be your maid. As long as you can save my mother." Long Xiaoya usually had a lot of schemes, but at this moment her nature was revealed. Even if she had to sacrifice herself, she would save her mother. "It's useless. She has no pulse. I can't save her. Even if you die in front of me, it's useless. I'm really powerless," the doctor said helplessly. "That's not necessarily true." Gohan glanced at Wen Meiyun's wound and found that the organs in her abdomen had begun to show black marks, which meant that Wen Meiyun's organs had lost their activity. It was basically a death sentence for Wen Meiyun. However, Gohan knew that Wen Meiyun was dead at this time. Her organs have just lost their activity. The brain is the slowest to die of all the organs. Generally, after the organs die, her brain and soul can still exist for about 5 minutes. In other words, she can still be saved. "Doctor, save my mother! Save my mother!" When Long Xiaoya heard what Gohan said, she immediately said excitedly and hugged even harder. "Sai, even if that's the case, we're still just a shelter, not a hospital." The doctor was also very helpless. To save her from such an injury, we need advanced physical regeneration equipment. The patients here are all sent to us after being treated by the hospital. We only have some medicine here, we don't have those equipment at all. The nearest hospital is more than 10 minutes away. By the time you get there, her life will be gone. It's not that I don't want to save her. Even I only have a nursing license. I don't have a medical license at all. I don't have the right to save her. You should just cremate her quickly. My condolences." How could this be? Long Xiaoya's body collapsed onto the ground like a puddle of mud. "Get up. Since that's the case, we can't waste any more time," Gohan suddenly said. Long Xiaoya quivered. Could it be that this person had a way to save her mother? Long Xiaoya stood up expectantly, only to see this person pull out a pitch-black sword from somewhere. In the blink of an eye, the sword in his hand fell, and Wen Meiyun's head was separated from her body. Murder! When the doctor saw this scene, he was so shocked that he sat on the ground. The people around him also looked at this scene in shock. Someone actually cut off a patient's head in public. Many people's mental endurance was not strong enough, and when they saw this scene, they directly fainted. "Mom!" When Long Xiaoya saw her mother's head was cut off, her vision turned black, and she almost fainted. When Long Xiaoya regained some consciousness, she was about to fight Gohan with all her might, but she suddenly saw a coffin-like thing on the ground. Her mother's head had been moved into the coffin, and it was frozen solid by the ice, turning into an ice sculpture. "Follow me." Gohan lifted the coffin with one hand and walked out of the shelter. No one present dared to stop him. Long Xiaoya did not hesitate, and directly followed Gohan out. Therefore, the passers-by on the street saw a very strange scene. A person was carrying a coffin with one hand, and behind him was a little girl with a lot of blood on her body. "Sir, is this a medical pod?" Long Xiaoya was not like Lu Shihua. She was very concerned about the sword-bearers, so after her initial days, she recognized that this was not a coffin, but a medical pod. In fact, Long Xiaoya had seen a medical pod once. "Yes." Gohan said yes, and did not say anything else. However, Long Xiaoya was completely relieved. Since he used a medical pod to freeze her mother's head, it meant that this person actually wanted to save her mother. Long Xiaoya had heard that medical technology was so advanced that it was terrifying. Even if it was just a head, As long as it was frozen in time, it could be saved and reconstructed. However, the cost of such treatment was as high as tens of millions of RMB. It was not something that ordinary people could afford. Only sword holders could enjoy such treatment. Because medical pods were not allowed to use the public transportation system, Gohan had to carry the medical pod for quite a long time before arriving at the hospital. In fact, on the way there, they passed by many hospitals, but Gohan knew that ordinary hospitals could not do something like reconstructing a body. Only a few big hospitals in Yuzhong City could do this. Yuzhong City Sword Bearers Second Hospital. It was such a hospital. As the name suggested, it was a hospital that specialized in treating sword bearers. Originally, when Maiden could not go to such a hospital for treatment, but she was the sword bearer's maid, and was considered to be within the scope of the rules. As long as the sword bearer insisted, the hospital would have time and would not reject a patient like when Maiden. Moreover, other than the special hospital for sword bearers, other hospitals could not rely on a head to reconstruct a body. "Sir, please come here." As soon as the doctor on duty saw someone coming with a medical pod, he greeted him enthusiastically. He took it for granted that the person in the medical pod was a sword bearer. When the doctor saw that there was only a female head in the medical pod, he suddenly gasped. He knew that this was the most difficult situation. Prepare the second special medical pod immediately. It needs to be used in 10 minutes. The doctor on duty ordered through the hospital's internal system. The special medical pod was used to reconstruct a body, but for a body with only one head, only the first and second special medical pods could do it. How long did it take for this lady's heart to stop beating and her head to be frozen? The doctor on duty asked nervously. The longer the time, the lower the chance of survival. About 3 minutes. In fact, Gohan did not know when Meiden's heart stopped beating, so he made up a time. That's good. She can still be saved. The doctor on duty heaved a sigh of relief. If it had been more than 5 minutes, it would be a huge problem. They might not be able to save her. If it had been more than 10 minutes, she would be cremated. This was no longer a problem that could be solved by medical science. That's great. That's great. Long Xiaoya prayed to the heavens. She was on the verge of despair just now. Please tell me her name and the level of the sword bearer. We need to register it. The doctor on duty continued. When Maiden, the sword bearer's level is not available. She's a normal person. Gohan answered cleanly. Normal. The doctor on duty's hand trembled, and his expression changed. Did you not see the hospital's sign? This is the second sword bearer hospital. We treat sword bearers and adults. Please send a normal person to the people's hospital. We don't accept them here. Can the people's hospital restore her limbs? Gohan glared at the doctor. This patient will be treated here. Why are you like this? Are you still a doctor? Weren't you very enthusiastic just now? Why can't my mother be saved if she's not a sword bearer? Is she not a human? When Long Xiaoya heard that the doctor wasn't willing to save her, she immediately cried. This lady should be a sword bearer. The doctor wasn't someone who didn't know how to read people. Although he was very unhappy, he still tried to be as polite as possible. Sir, I don't know who she is to you. If it's a normal illness, it's fine. Our hospital didn't say anything and immediately treated her. But sir, this patient needs her whole body to be reborn. This requires 10 units of soul solution, which is too precious. Our hospital has a clear rule that if it's not the sword bearer, no treatment is allowed. Even if it's a spiritual sword-level sword bearer's relative, we can't save her. Last time, the wife of the eagle cat sword spirit was the same, but we still refused according to the rules. Even if the eagle cat sword spirit knelt in front of us, it was useless. In the end, the eagle cat sword spirit could only leave with tears in his eyes. We really can't break the rules, the doctor said very sincerely. In fact, there was only one core meaning. We can't even treat the wife of the eagle cat sword spirit. Unless you're an immortal sword-level sword bearer, don't even think about it. There's such a rule? Gohan didn't know that there was such a rule. He immediately logged into the database of the Sword Bearer Service Center and checked the relevant rules. Sure enough, there was such a rule. All treatment methods above grade A could only be used by sword bearers. Ordinary people couldn't use it. The reason was simple. This would consume a lot of precious materials. These materials couldn't be wasted on ordinary people. They had to be used by sword bearers. Even immortal sword bearers were no exception. Of course, this was just a rule. With Gohan's identity as the Sword Tower Master, the hospital couldn't refuse if he forced the hospital to treat him. However, if he did that, the whole rule would be broken. In the future, there would be people who would use the story of the military governor as an example and force the hospital to treat their ordinary relative. In this way, wouldn't some sword bearers lose their chance of survival? I understand. Gohan sighed and waved at the doctor. Only then did the doctor relax and quickly ordered the second special medical cabin to stop the preparation. What do you mean by this? Are we not going to save my mother? Only Long Xiaoyao was at a loss. She had no idea what was going on. Chapter 659. Let's go. Let's give your mother the result she wants. Gohan looked at Long Xiaoyao, who was covered in tears and snot. Since there was such a rule, he could not break it, so he could only send Wenmeiyun to paradise. No. My mother can still be saved. She is still alive. Long Xiaoyao hugged Gohan's waist. I know you. You are my mother's master. You are Lord Gohan, right? Please, for the sake of my mother serving you so wholeheartedly, please save my mother. Long Xiaoyao was not stupid. On the contrary, she was smarter than her peers. Perhaps she did not know who this masked man was at first, but she knew that the sword wielder who would come to see her mother, other than Gohan, it was impossible for it to be anyone else. Gohan shrugged. He was not interested in how Long Xiaoyao had guessed his identity. He only needed to know that his identity had been exposed, and he would undoubtedly be in a lot of trouble. Your mother did serve me, but she was just a maid. I didn't touch her either. Gohan paused. There are rules here that he must follow. Your mother is not worth me breaking this rule. Do you understand? I can't save your mother. Gohan's answer was very cold. Maybe someone could make Gohan break this rule. His parents could, Song Hama could, and Song Yifei could, but Wenmeiyun could not. For Gohan, Wenmeiyun was just a maid that he could use easily. Within 3 minutes, he could find a maid who was also easy to use, which was much easier than saving Wenmeiyun. I knew it. I told my mother to take the initiative, so that you would not be so heartless. Long Xiaoyao's words were very soft. What if I join you? I can serve you with my mother. Can you break this rule in this way? Serve you together? What did that mean? Hearing this, the little Gohan under Gohan could not help moving. Of course, on the surface, Gohan looked even colder. Please don't humiliate yourself like this. You have your own life. Say goodbye to your mother and go pursue your own life. I will give you a sum of money, enough for you to complete your studies as compensation for your mother's contributions. Gohan said coldly. No, I don't want money, I just want Mom. Without a mother, I would rather die. Long Xiaoyao hugged Gohan closer and closer. She said agitatedly, I want to humiliate myself. I may be *tch. I'm your toy. You can treat me as a plaything, a slave, a pet, or even a female dog or a sow. I'm fine with it. I'm very pretty and have a good figure. My breasts can continue to develop. I'm still a virgin. I'm very obedient. I'll do whatever you want me to do. I can do anything that is shameful. I can do any kind of posture, any kind of cheap thing, I can do it. Even if it's eating *t, drinking urine, and licking toes, I can do it. I can bark like a dog or a pig. I can even live in a cage like a dog. I'm your little bitch, okay. Okay. Oh yeah, I can also be with my mother. We're mother and daughter. I came out from my mother's belly. Now, the two of us can shamelessly serve you together. We can do whatever you want us to do. My mother can also do what I said just now. I promise. The two of us are connected. It's very interesting. It's very fun. You'll be very happy. You'll be very happy. The more Long Xiaoya spoke, the more excited she became. She had sold her and her mother's soul and dignity to Gohan. Long Xiaoya had made up her mind. As long as Gohan could save her mother, she would do what she said. She would use the most extreme methods to humiliate herself to please Gohan. She had no choice. Other than her body, Long Xiaoya had nothing else to exchange with Gohan. It had to be admitted that Long Xiaoya's words were extremely tempting. Gohan, who had mastered the first sword of the 3 green lotus swords, actually swelled up even more after hearing Long Xiaoya's words. However, Gohan was more touched. He could hear the love Long Xiaoya had for her mother from her words. It was just like how he loved his own mother. Unfortunately, this could not change Gohan's decision. This rule could not be broken. Say no more. I'm not interested in your body. Gohan pushed away Long Xiaoya, who was hugging him. He then squatted down and began to operate the medical pod to defrost Wenmeiyun's head. He then cremated the head along with her body. By the way, the crematorium was right next to the hospital. This was a very humane design. The moment Long Xiaoya was pushed away by Gohan, she lost consciousness due to despair. She fainted on the ground. Before she fainted, the last thing she saw was the sound of Gohan squatting on the ground and operating the medical pod. Please confirm whether to defrost and enter medical procedure. Gohan pressed the defrost button, and the medical pod displayed this prompt. Gohan pressed confirm, and Wenmeiyun's frozen head began to defrost slowly. Defrost complete. Entering medical procedure. Warning. Insufficient resources. Please replenish biochemical comprehensive culture fluid, muscle cell tissue comprehensive culture fluid, DNA comprehensive culture fluid, cell recombinant adhesive fixative. The medical pod indicated that more than 30 kinds of medical substances needed to be replenished. Gohan glanced at it roughly and found that among the missing substances, the name of Soul Solution was missing. Soul Solution was a kind of solution that humans had yet to understand. This was a byproduct of the dimensional crystal mine. In the mine under the control of Yuzhong City, on average, 1 unit of Soul Solution could be mined every day. The biggest use of Soul Solution now was the rebirth of the human body. Physical rebirth and limb regeneration were 2 completely different concepts. Generally speaking, the restoration of limbs or certain body organs was called limb regeneration. Limb regeneration required some medical materials that humans could produce. Although it was expensive, it was only expensive. As long as you had money, even ordinary people could be treated. However, there was a prerequisite for limb regeneration, which was that the patient needed to maintain a heartbeat, which was the activity of the body and the activity of the cells. Once the heartbeat was lost, limb regeneration could not be used. The only way to use it was physical rebirth. By strengthening the soul of the deceased, the soul could activate a little bit of activity in the body in an instant. Even if only 1% of the cells in the body were activated, limb regeneration could be carried out. Of course, this kind of physical rebirth could only be used by people who died in an accident. Normally, because humans who had reached the end of their lifespan, their souls were already weak. It was useless to strengthen them. Therefore, people who died of old age or illness could not use physical rebirth. Soul Solution was the only solution that could instantly strengthen the soul of the deceased. It was also a necessary tool for physical rebirth. Because Soul Solution was too rare, the Sword Committee stipulated that only sword bearers could enjoy the treatment of physical rebirth. Ordinary people were not qualified to use this method for treatment. Generally speaking, the medical pod could only perform simple limb regeneration at most. It could not even perform more complex limb regeneration, let alone the more complex physical rebirth. However, this medical pod showed that when Mei Yun had entered the state of treatment, and it also listed the medical resources that were missing. This was something unbelievable. Either the medical bay was broken or the medical bay was different from the others. Gohan knew that this was a medical pod used by Sword Immortals. It was different from ordinary medical pods. Could it be that Sword Immortals' medical pods could perform a treatment as complex as physical rebirth? Gohan had some doubts, and the best way to verify his suspicions was to try. Gohan looked again and found that there was indeed no such precious thing as soul solution in the list of missing resources. It needed some medical resources that were not expensive. Fortunately, this was a hospital. As long as one had money, one could buy these resources. Therefore, Gohan went to the hospital's pharmacy and requested to buy these medical resources. These medical resources were also commonly used by ordinary medical pods. Many sword bearers often came to the hospital to buy resources to replenish their own medical pod. Therefore, these resources were not expensive. All the resources that Gohan needed added up to only 300,000 yuan. It was not even comparable to the cost of a meal at Chanel Pork Restaurant today. Thinking of his possible future needs, Gohan thought of the principle of being prepared. Other than the amount that he needed to replenish, Gohan spent more than 5 million RMB to purchase additional resources. These resources were enough for Gohan to regrow his limbs more than 10 to 20 times. By the way, after buying these resources, Gohan's account was empty again. This was because all his money had been used to buy lottery tickets in the game. According to the rules, the lottery rewards would be transferred to the player's account in a few days. Therefore, before the lottery income came in, Gohan would have to live a poor life for a while. After these purchased resources were replenished in the medical pod, the red light that showed the alarm was completely extinguished. It turned into a green state of repair. Through the glass, one could see that the moment the repair began, a dark purple liquid was injected into Mayun's brain. When Mayun's eyes opened the moment it was injected, it was not just a simple opening but the opening of consciousness. Gohan could see fear and doubt in Mayun's eyes. However, this consciousness only lasted for a short few seconds. This was the temporary effect of the soul solution strengthening the soul. After a few seconds, when Mayun entered a state of deep sleep again. However, a new body was slowly growing at her neck. The most difficult part of physical rebirth had passed. All that was left was to wait for Mayun's rebirth. Chapter 660. In a daze, Long Xiaoya opened her eyes and found herself lying on a hospital bed. A few nurses were looking at her curiously. Long Xiaoya shivered and immediately grabbed the nurse's hand. She asked anxiously, "Where's my mother? How's my mother?" Don't worry. Your mother is fine. Your mother has recovered." The nurse's hand hurt from Long Xiaoya's grip. She quickly broke free and pointed to the bed on the side. Sure enough, a familiar figure was lying on the bed. Long Xiaoya recognized it at a glance. It was her mother, Mayun. Long Xiaoya rolled and crawled to her mother's bedside. She was surprised to find that her mother was actually in a state of naked. There was not a single piece of clothing on her body, and she was just lying on the bed. "What's wrong with my mother? Why didn't you put clothes on her?" Long Xiaoya asked anxiously. "It's not that we don't want to put clothes on your mother. She needs clothes too." The nurse stuck out her tongue. "That lord left her here. We don't have money to buy clothes for him. It's that lord who cured my mother." Long Xiaoya immediately realized that it was probably Gohan who had healed Mayun and then left her here. Lord Gohan still has a mother in his heart. Long Xiaoya suddenly blushed. Maybe Lord Gohan didn't do it because he has a mother in his heart, but because of the embarrassing words I said before. Long Xiaoya let go of her shameful thoughts and carefully looked at her mother's body. She found that Wen Meiyun's body had completely changed. Her skin, which had been rough over the years, had become extremely tender and smooth like a baby's skin. There were some places with excess fat, but the surface was very flat, without a trace of excess fat. However, the size of the opie did not change. In fact, it had grown a lot bigger. Moreover, the originally soft opie had become extremely firm. Even when lying down, it maintained a perfect upright state. This was a perfect brand new body. Every part of it was new, a body that no one had used before. I'm so envious. If I could get that Lord's favor, I would also want to leave my head behind and get a new body, the nurse said enviously. This Wen Meiyun seemed to have profited from a disaster. Her entire body had become the baby state that all women dreamed of. But this baby state body was the body of a mature woman. Any man who saw such a body would probably be unable to restrain his desire and couldn't wait to ride on it. Even Long Xiaoyao was inexplicably envious. She discovered that her mother's body was much more perfect than a young girl's body. Long Xiaoyao, who was very confident in her own body, couldn't help but feel jealous. For her, youth was her greatest advantage, but now it seemed that this advantage was gone. Sisters, how long until my mother wakes up? Long Xiaoya asked again. That's not necessarily true. Maybe she'll wake up now. Maybe she'll have to wait until tomorrow. Anyway, your mother has come back to life and won't die. The nurse touched her head and seemed to have thought of something. She took out a note from her pocket and handed it to Long Xiaoya. When that lord left, he said that when your mother wakes up, you should go to this address. Great! You can actually become a spirit sword lord's woman. When I give birth to a girl in the future, I will never let her be a nurse. It's better to send her to a maid school and be a maid for the sword bearer. Maybe I can also change my body when I'm old. The nurse said enviously. Long Xiaoya took the note and saw the words, Mount Emperor's Phoenix House, written on it. Has Gohan moved to Mount Emperor? Long Xiaoya was shocked. Isn't Mount Emperor a place where only spirit sword bearers can live? But Lord Gohan is clearly a treasure sword bearer. What's going on? Could it be that after disappearing for a few days, he became a spirit sword bearer? Long Xiaoya clenched the note, and her desire to hug Gohan's thigh became even more intense. Gohan returned to the Phoenix House and found that Qing Pin and Gu Yun, the two troublemakers, had irresponsibly fallen asleep on the bed after making a mess of his bed. After a busy day, Gohan was a little tired, but he still put on his helmet and entered the game world. King Yu was still lying on the bed at this time. Seeing that Gohan was online again, he said angrily, You still know to come back. I'm tired. King Yu thought that Gohan was online to deal with something, but he didn't expect that as soon as Gohan entered his room, he started to take off his clothes. He only wore a pair of underwear and lay on his bed, squeezing into his quilt. What are you doing? Are you crazy? King Yu was shocked and wanted to kick Gohan off with both his sleep and body. Don't mess around. I'm tired, let me sleep for a while. Unexpectedly, Gohan hugged King Yu and ignored his struggle. After a few minutes, he fell asleep and breathed evenly. Bastard, stinking pervert. Seeing that Gohan had fallen asleep, King Yu stopped struggling and muttered, If you want to sleep, go sleep in reality. What's the point of sleeping in the game? Who logs into the game just to sleep? Although that was what he said, King Yu's smile became sweeter and sweeter. Feeling Gohan's breathing, he also fell asleep. Mom, be careful. With Long Xiaoya's support, Wen Meiyun limped on the road. Not long after Long Xiaoya woke up, Wen Meiyun woke up and was surprised to find that her body had returned to normal. It was even more perfect than before. After asking, she found out what happened from Long Xiaoya. After sincerely thanking Gohan, Wen Meiyun didn't want to stay in the hospital for even a moment. Even if she hadn't completely adapted to her new body, She wanted to get out of bed and find Gohan to be his maid. Originally, Long Xiaoya wanted Wen Meiyun to rest for a day or two, but she couldn't stop Wen Meiyun's persistence. Long Xiaoya could only buy a patient's gown from the hospital and help Wen Meiyun walk towards Mount D. Originally, there was a bus to Mount D. However, it was said that because of the protest this morning, many bus drivers had been arrested by the police. Therefore, the bus system decided to go on strike. Long Xiaoya could only support Wen Meiyun all the way. At this moment, Wen Meiyun was like a child who had just learned to walk. Long Xiaoya couldn't even help Wen Meiyun walk smoothly. Instead, she was sweating profusely and exhausted. Just as Long Xiaoya was about to collapse, a hand reached out and supported Wen Meiyun's body. Long Xiaoya took a look and saw that it was a pretty girl who looked a little older than Long Xiaoya. "Thank you," Long Xiaoya said gratefully. "It's okay, where are you going? Let me help you there," the girl said enthusiastically. She was carrying a super big bag filled with all kinds of clothes on her back, as if she was going to move. "Xiaoya, don't bother this girl." Wen Meiyun didn't want to bother others, but Long Xiaoya didn't think so. How could she not use a good person who came to her door? So Long Xiaoya said hurriedly, "We are going to Mount D. You don't need to care about us. Just do your own thing." "What a coincidence, I also want to go to Mount D. It's on the way," the girl said sincerely. "What a coincidence, I also helped a patient like your mother this morning. They both have bad legs." Therefore, this girl supported Wen Meiyun all the way to Mount D. Long Xiaoya thought that they were going to separate, but when she followed the road sign, she was surprised to find that this girl was actually going the same way as her. When she arrived at the entrance of the Phoenix restaurant, this girl also happened to stop there. The two girls looked at each other. "Sister Xihua, do you live here?" Long Xiaoya asked curiously. "Yes." Lu Xihua nodded. She felt a little dreamy when she admitted that she lived here. "Then you are the mistress of this place?" Long Xiaoya said very playfully. No. I am just my master's disciple. My master let me live here to teach me." Long Xiaoya waved her hand and said. Long Xiaoya was relieved when she heard that. She thought that Gohan had found a woman, but it turned out that it was just a disciple. But on second thought, Long Xiaoya felt that she couldn't let her guard down. Now it was popular to fall in love with a disciple. Moreover, men always had a little illusion about their female disciples. Maybe this female disciple would become the mistress. He had to obtain Gohan's love and affection. More love than any other woman. Long Xiaoya gritted her teeth and thought. "Miss Xiaoya, then you are?" After explaining his identity, Lu Xihua began to be curious about Long Xiaoya's identity. "Oh, my mother is your master's maid. As soon as my mother came out of the hospital, your master couldn't wait to ask my mother to come and take care of him. He can't leave our service for a moment." Gohan had told Long Xiaoya not to say her name. Although Long Xiaoya thought that Lu Xihua should know Gohan's name, she had to carry out Gohan's orders meticulously. Only in this way could she get Gohan's appreciation. So she didn't directly say Gohan's name. "Well, that's such a coincidence. We will live together in the future," Long Xiaoya said shyly. They chatted for a while at the door, and then they found that no one had opened the door. It took too long to open the door. Long Xiaoya pressed a few more times, and the door was opened. Lu Anna looked at the two people at the door with a silly smile. Chapter 661. When Gohan woke up, it was already almost 10 o'clock in the middle of the night. At this time, Gohan only felt refreshed. He glanced at King Yu and found that she was still asleep, but her eyelids were twitching slightly. Obviously, she was pretending to be asleep. "I'm going offline," Gohan said. However, King Yu still did not move and was still pretending to be asleep. "I'll come back tomorrow." After saying that, Gohan went offline and disappeared. The moment Gohan disappeared, King Yu jumped up from the bed in anger and threw the pillow on the ground. She pouted and said, "You didn't even wipe your mouth after eating this bastard." Gohan took off his helmet. Chinpin and Guyun were still sleeping. Gohan kissed each of their faces and left the room. According to his estimations, when Meiyun and Long Xiaoya should be back by now. Sure enough, when Meiyun and Long Xiaoya were practicing walking in the brightly lit hall and moving their arms, Lu Shihua looked at the dozens of light bulbs that were constantly emitting dazzling light with a face full of worry. How much electricity did this consume? In the past, this hour of electricity was enough for the siblings' expenses for a day. From the moment she entered the house, when Meiyun had already practiced walking for almost 7 hours. At the beginning, she needed 2 people to support her, but now she could touch some furniture and walk by herself. Her arm could also be used half normally. It could be said that she had recovered half of her mobility. This was all thanks to Wen Meiyun's hard work. Furthermore, she had refused anyone's help. If not for the soft carpet on the floor of the living room, she would have been injured all over. "Master!" Seeing Gohan appear on the stairs, when Meiyun, who was practicing walking, suddenly knelt on the ground. Because she was too anxious, she lost her balance and became like a dog crawling. Half of her hospital gown was lifted up, revealing her snow-white skin like that of a baby. This skin made Gohan somewhat move. Little Gohan couldn't help but start to become active. "Lord!" Long Xiaoya immediately followed her mother's steps and knelt in front of Gohan. She lowered her head deeply and did not dare to raise it. Lu Shihua looked at this scene in shock. She looked at Wen Meiyun and her daughter, and then looked at Gohan, who was high up in the air. She could not understand why 2 such beautiful people would suddenly kneel in front of Gohan. Isn't it a harmonious society now? Wasn't such an unequal thing as kneeling already abolished before the great calamity? Why did they have to kneel in front of Gohan? Do I have to kneel in front of him? With that in mind, Lu Shihua took a deep breath, stood up, bent his knees, and prepared to kneel down as well. After spending so much time together, she had already become friends with Wen Meiyun and her mother. She couldn't watch her friend kneel while she remained indifferent. "Shihua, what are you doing?" In a flash, Gohan's figure appeared in front of Lu Shihua. Before Lu Shihua's legs could touch the carpet, Gohan grabbed him and helped him up. "I'm kneeling in front of you. Isn't this the etiquette of your family?" Lu Shihua said with her head lowered. "You are my disciple, a sword wielder. You don't have to do this kind of thing," Gohan said indifferently. "In other words, it's natural for Sister One to kneel?" Lu Shihua bit her lip. "I'm not a sword wielder yet. I'm just an ordinary person now. I have to kneel in front of you." "Sister Lu, don't say any more. My mother is Master's maid. It's natural for a maid to kneel in front of Master. Moreover, Master saved my mother's life. It's natural for us to kneel in front of Master. You are Master's disciple. You can't be like us. Aren't we friends?" Lu Shihua turned around and looked at Long Xiaoya. "We're not worthy." Long Xiaoya lowered her head and said softly, "Ridiculous. This world is too ridiculous. It's too scary." Lu Shihua swung her hand and quickly left the living room. She ran into her room. Her worldview was being destroyed. Gohan looked at Lu Shihua's disappearing figure and sighed. Lu Shihua obviously grew up in a slum. She should have seen the fickleness of the world. How could she be so naive sometimes? "You guys get up too. Sit," Gohan ordered. However, when Meiyun was still kneeling on the ground and refused to get up. "If you guys don't get up, I'll chase you out and get a new maid," Gohan said faintly. Only then did Wen Meiyun climb up with the help of Long Xiaoya. She sat opposite Gohan. She didn't dare to sit firmly and only put half of her butt on the sofa. "Meiyun, you know me well. My family doesn't like these things. It's still the same in the past. I saved your life because I want to use you. You're my maid. You give and I give back. It's that simple. Do you understand?" "Yes," Wen Meiyun replied in a low voice. "All right, from now on, you'll be responsible for the housework of the entire family. The space here is a little big, so you'll have to work a little harder. By the way, you probably haven't adapted to your new body yet. You should try your best to adapt to your new body in the next few days. It won't be too late to act when you can move freely." Gohan quickly finished speaking and was about to get up and leave. "Master, don't go yet. Mayun has one more thing to beg of Master." When Mayun suddenly knelt in front of Gohan. "What is it?" Gohan frowned. "Master, the space here is so big. I can't clean it all by myself," when Mayun said while biting her lips. "So? Are you planning to let me help you?" Gohan was a little unhappy. Could it be that this one Mayun was planning to take a mile after taking an inch? No, when Mayun doesn't dare to have such thoughts. Mayun only wants to find a helper for herself. Master is already a sword wielder of the sword level and can have 2 maids. Mayun dares to ask Xiaoya to serve Master together with Mayun. It was as if when Mayun had finally managed to finish her sentence after countless struggles in her heart. "Mother!" Long Xiaoya was shocked when she heard this. Although she had long wanted to become Gohan's maid, and then find a chance to push Gohan down and get Gohan's love, completing the transformation from an ugly duckling to a white swan, Long Xiaoya was very opposed to this matter. However, when Mayun was very against this matter. She had always wished for Long Xiaoya to become a scientist and then find an honest man who loved her and spend the rest of her life with him. She wanted to live a happy and simple life. She was very disgusted with Long Xiaoya walking down her old path. Long Xiaoya had vaguely told her thoughts a few times, but they were all rejected by Wen Meiyun. However, she never expected that Wen Meiyun would actually bring it up herself this time. Long Xiaoya swore to God that this was her mother's own decision. She, Long Xiaoya, did not mention a word related to it today. Why? Gohan was stunned for a while. He couldn't help but think of what Long Xiaoya said to him in the hospital today. Little Gohan's heart jumped again. Master, Meiyun is someone who has died once. Meiyun has thought through everything. When Meiyun's voice sounded as if she had seen through the world of mortals. Women need to find a strong backer. Being alive is the greatest happiness. Only by following her master could Xiaoya live and obtain happiness. My life was saved by Master. My life belongs to Master. Xiaoya's life also belongs to Master. How good is it? Xiaoya and I can be together forever. When Meiyun's logic was a little messy. Her words were a little incoherent, but the meaning behind it was already understood by Gohan. It was nothing more than when Meiyun seeing through the world and feeling that only power could protect her and Long Xiaoya's safety. And the strongest power she could find, other than Gohan, who else could it be? I understand. Gohan nodded, then said to Xiaoya, Xiaoya, are you willing? I'm willing. I'm willing. As long as I can serve Master and be with Mother forever, I'm willing to do anything. Long Xiaoya hurriedly kowtowed a few times, then said with a red face, Xiaoya remembers Xiaoya's promise. Xiaoya will keep it. Alright. I'll apply to the maid center. Xiaoya, from now on you're my maid. There were 2 ways to become a maid. One was to go through the maid school to train, then the sword-bearer would go to the maid center to choose and sign a contract. The second way was to find a woman who was willing to be their maid. Then, under the condition that both parties were willing, they would sign a maid contract. The maid center was in charge of the former method, and the latter method was also in charge of the maid center. Thank you, Master. Thank you, Master. Long Xiaoya's wish suddenly came true. She immediately kowtowed to Gohan excitedly. No need to kowtow. I don't like these things. Just do your work with peace of mind. As long as you take care of the family, I will guarantee your safety. As long as you are my Gohan's people, I will protect you to the best of my ability. Gohan waved his hand. I've already submitted my application. Tomorrow, you can go to the maid center to confirm it and then sign the contract. Yes, Master. Long Xiaoya and Wen Meiyun kowtowed in unison. Forget it, I'm going to take a shower. Your room is the first room on the third floor. You and your daughter can use one room. Rest early. You've been tired for the whole day. After Gohan finished speaking, he walked to the bathroom on the top floor. Mother, I'll help you to your room to rest. Long Xiaoya stood up to help Maiden up, but when Maiden patted Long Xiaoya's hand, she hesitated for a while and said, Mother can go. You go and serve master. Serve, master? Long Xiaoya was a little confused. What did that mean? Sigh, you stupid child. Why are you still a maid? As a maid, the most basic thing is to serve the master. Now that the master wants to take a shower, the maid has to serve him. But I can't move my hands and feet now. Otherwise, I wouldn't let a clumsy child like you go over. From tomorrow onwards, you have to learn the basic knowledge of a maid from me. Since you've become master's maid, these are the things that you have to learn. Yes, mother. Long Xiaoya's heart was perturbed. But mother, if master wants me to do that, what should I do? When Maiden was stunned for a moment. In the end, she touched Long Xiaoya's face. Serve master well. Master's words are the truth. Understand? Chapter 662. The bathing pool on the top floor was the most outstanding design in the entire Phoenix Tower. Especially when the mobile metal cover on the top floor was opened, and the bright moon above his head could be seen clearly through the glass. All of this seemed especially beautiful. Accompanied by the bright moonlight, Gohan's body and mind relaxed as he immersed himself in the temperature-controlled bathing pool. It was as if many things did not exist. Just as Gohan was enjoying the moonlight, a slight sound of footsteps attracted Gohan's attention. Although the owner of the footsteps tried to tiptoe, it still could not escape Gohan's ears. Didn't I tell you to go and rest? Don't you understand my orders? Long Xiaoya? Gohan's stern rebuke made Long Xiaoya shiver uncontrollably. She was so scared that she knelt down again and said intermittently, Mom said that it's the maidservant's responsibility to serve the master when he takes a bath. Mom was the one who asked Xiaoya to serve the master. You're not my maidservant yet. When the contract is signed tomorrow, you will be my maidservant. You don't need to do this kind of thing now. Get out, Gohan ordered. Long Xiaoya had no choice but to get up and leave. However, when Gohan entered the water just now, there was a splash. These splashes were scattered on the ground on both sides. Long Xiaoya was originally barefoot, and when she stood up, she was a little absent-minded. Naturally, her feet slipped, and then her whole body fell into the water. Long Xiaoya fell head first into the water. As soon as she entered the water, she drank 2 mouthfuls of water. Immediately, she felt that her whole body was about to suffocate. She shouted for help twice, and her head became a little dizzy. She began to sink to the bottom of the water. If no one saved her, she might become the only maidservant who drowned in the bathroom water. At this critical moment, an arm wrapped around Long Xiaoya's armpit and dragged her out of the water. Hugging someone under the armpit, his arm would naturally press on the Opie, although Gohan was no longer a virgin in the game and in reality. However, Gohan had not figured out who the woman was in reality. In the game, Gohan's behavior was mostly forced by his desire. He only wanted to quickly enter the hole, shoot, and then nothing else. Gohan had never carefully felt a woman's Opie. At this moment, Long Xiaoya's Opie was the first woman Gohan could truly feel. It was a great feeling, and it made Gohan suddenly have an urge to not let go. Long Xiaoya, who was half asleep, suddenly felt someone slap her on the back. Immediately, a force surged into her back and poured into her heart and lungs. The pressure caused the water in her lungs to spurt out of her mouth and nostrils, just like a water gun. The water that poured into her lungs was swept away, and Long Xiaoya gradually regained consciousness. She found that she was being held in a strong chest, and their bodies were pressed against each other. It was the most intimate state, and one of his hands was covering her Opie. Long Xiaoya didn't even think about it. She used her own hand to grab Gohan's hand, so that he could better feel her body and soft flesh. Long Xiaoya, who had just taken a mouthful of milk, was chased to sleep. Gohan, who completely felt the benefits of being a woman, felt the gentle wash of water on his body. Since he had nothing to do, Gohan accessed the management system of Yuzhong City through his personal terminal. He was ready to look up some information about Mount D and make some preparations for his future plans. Suddenly, Gohan found an abnormal signal in the monitoring system. It was a yellow signal, which represented a slight anomaly. When someone passed by some remote places in the middle of the night, it would produce such an abnormal signal. Therefore, most of the yellow abnormal signals were ignored. But this time, it aroused Gohan's curiosity. He immediately used his mind to look up the monitoring system, and soon tracked two figures. A man was holding a woman, and they were moving quickly in Mount D like galloping horses. And looking at the direction they were running, it was clear that they were heading for the Phoenix Tower. With a thought from Gohan, all the lights in the Phoenix Tower were extinguished. Gohan himself dove into the water, and at the same time, he used the 9 swords of mysterious heaven to conceal his breath. Under the surveillance of Gohan, the two figures stopped on the roof of his tower after running for a while. Then, they gently pushed the window, intending to sneak into the Phoenix Tower through the window. Strange, it usually opens with a push. Why can't I open it today? Even through a soundproof window, Gohan could still hear the man's voice outside the window. Gohan's mind moved, the lock on the window was released, and in the next second, it was pulled open by someone. "Brother Tao, what's going on?" The other was a woman's voice. It was coquettish and coquettish. It sounded like she had the urge to force herself on him. "It's nothing. No one has lived in the Phoenix Tower for decades, and we often fiddled with the window. It must be damaged. It took some strength to open it," the man replied. Gohan sneered at the man's statement. The Phoenix Tower didn't have a master before, so no one controlled the window, so it naturally opened with a push. But now that the Phoenix Tower had a master, all the locks were automatically buckled. If it weren't for Gohan, the two of them wouldn't even be able to come in. The two of them were really a couple. As soon as they entered the top floor, Gohan heard the sounds of hugging, breathing, undressing, and kissing. Finally, they simply jumped into the water. "Brother Tao, why is the water warm? Does this place have a master?" As soon as she touched the water, the woman asked in surprise. "What's so strange about it? There must be other guys who have secretly used the bath here." The man anxiously kissed the woman's body and said, "If there is a new spirit sword level sword bearer in Yuzhong City, how could it be hidden from my family's eyes and ears? As long as there is no new spirit sword level sword bearer, this Phoenix Tower doesn't have a master. Hee, I guess someone must have secretly used the bathroom here to take a bath before, or simply did the same thing as us. There's nothing strange about it. Last time, I met a pair of wild mandarin ducks in the White Crane embrace," the man said excitedly. "Then, could these two people still be in the bath? I'm a little scared," the woman said. "That won't happen, my sword maiden is right beside me. I've already used her skill to scout the area. There's no one in the entire pool. My dear sister, I'm going in." What followed was the mating process between the adulterous couple. Gohan was not interested in watching them, but he was also burning with lust. It was not easy for him to move in the water, so he could only listen to their continuous panting and splashing of water. Fortunately, the man's ability wasn't high. After 5 or 6 minutes, he surrendered. After the man and woman gasped for a while, they began to gossip. This gossip made Gohan feel lucky that he let them in. Otherwise, he would have missed out on important information. He heard the man and woman whisper sweet nothings for a while, and then the woman said with a sobbing tone, "Brother Tao, when is your tigress going to divorce you? I don't want to live this kind of sneaky life anymore. Good sister, listen to me. I don't want to live with that tigress anymore, but I have no choice. Our family wants to cooperate with that tigress family. Before the cooperation is completed, I can't mention the divorce. Otherwise, my father will beat me to death, the man said sincerely, but Gohan knew that these were all lies. This man and this woman were just playing. He didn't have any thoughts of divorce at all. However, the woman didn't know this. She asked coquettishly, "What is it that requires your two families to cooperate? Aren't your two families the super existence in Yuzhong City? What else needs your two families to work together to solve?" "That's true for the most part, but that old man Lu Lei, our two families can't deal with him." The man suddenly lowered his voice and whispered to the woman, "Let me tell you, these are our two families' secrets. Don't tell anyone else." "I promise. I won't say a word." The woman's natural gossiping soul was seduced. Once it was seduced, she couldn't control herself and would agree to anything. As for whether they could keep it a secret or not, only God knew. It's like this. In order to dictate the entire Yuzhong City, Lu Lei is not satisfied with being the chairman of the Sword Committee. He actually let his disciple, who is at the sword level, become the Sword Pavilion Master. Don't you think this is too much? The man's tone was resentful, but more than that, he was jealous. The Sword Pavilion Master of the Sword Pavilion. The woman covered her mouth when she heard this. How is that possible? A sword-level cultivator can become the Sword Pavilion Master? That's why this Lu Lei is too much. So my father, Tigress' father, and the elders of the other two families discussed that we must get rid of that sword-level guy. Either the chairman of the Sword Committee or the Sword Pavilion Master. Either way, one of these two positions must be given to us. But Lu Lei is a sword immortal level sword wielder, the last sword immortal level sword wielder in Yuzhong City. If you guys do this and Lu Lei quits, what will happen if he encounters such a terrifying attack again? The woman asked in a panic. At least she had some brains and knew who Yuzhong City's stabilizing force was. Yes, we know. That's why we can't go against Lu Lei openly. We must use underhanded methods to get rid of that Gohan. The man then explained how he planned to use the beheading incident to ruin Gohan's reputation. It turned out that they were the masterminds behind the entire incident. But I heard that Gohan has disappeared. He might already be dead. You guys made such a big fuss, but it might all be a waste of effort, the woman said doubtfully. No, that Gohan is not dead. You don't know this, but this Gohan is actually the famous military governor in the game. He just got lucky in the 8-city sword conference and actually defeated a sword immortal level sword wielder. How could he be dead? He must be hiding somewhere in Yuzhong City, plotting against us with Lu Lei. The man did not know that Gohan was not hiding anywhere else, but in the water less than 10 meters away from him. Chapter 663. I don't think your plan is brilliant. As long as Gohan doesn't come out, it will be fine. This matter will only be heated up for a few months. Once it's over, it will be forgotten. The woman was quite knowledgeable. She immediately pointed out the crux of the problem. She was right. As long as Gohan kept hiding, this matter would be forgotten. This was also Gohan and Lu Lei's plan. Ahem, we didn't expect him to be so patient at first. Normally, people would have rushed out to clarify themselves. Also, we don't know what happened to the envoy from London. He didn't show up, which made our 4 families panic. But it doesn't matter. We already have a new plan. This time, even if Gohan doesn't show up, we can force him to show up, the man said. How? The woman asked curiously. Well, this is an absolute secret. I can't tell others, but I like you so much, so I don't mind telling you. The man kissed the woman's face. Isn't his heavenly sword still in the hands of a great sword forger? That blacksmith was nurtured by our clan. As long as we bring the heavenly sword over and trap him, I don't believe that he'll be able to hide in a corner and not come out. It's either the heavenly sword or his position as the Sword Pavilion Master. He'll have to choose. Hearing the man's words, Gohan frowned. He didn't expect them to target the heavenly sword. They wanted to use it to force him to come out. Although he knew their plan, he didn't have a way to deal with it. The heavenly sword was still being repaired, which meant that it was in the hands of a great sword forger. Once the sword lady started to repair it, it was best not to change the great sword forger. Otherwise, all the previous efforts would be wasted. Moreover, the sword lady might be damaged. Therefore, even though Gohan knew that these rascals wanted to harm his heavenly sword, Gohan couldn't take it back. The great sword forger was on their side. Gohan had to be cautious. Fortunately, these people had only planned to use the heaven-reliant sword to threaten Gohan and did not plan to tamper with the sword. Otherwise, Gohan would have taken back the heaven-reliant sword even if it was damaged. However, they weren't stupid enough to do anything to the heavenly sword. After his death, the heavenly sword would still belong to Yuzhong City. They weren't stupid enough to dig his foundation. Humph, I thought it was a good plan. It's just to force him out. Even if he does, what can you do? As long as Lu Lei insists on not replacing the sword pavilion master, what can you do to him? The woman said disdainfully. However, she was right. Lu Lei was thick-skinned. If he didn't want to remove Gohan's position, they wouldn't be able to do anything to him. The woman said disdainfully, but what she said was true. With Lu Lei's thick skin, if he insisted on not removing Gohan from his position, they couldn't do anything to him. As the woman said, would the people of Mount D dare to rebel? Since the ancient time, no D Shan in any city had ever rebelled. Once they did, the Sword Committee headquarters would never let them off. Even if the D Shan's clans had thousands of reasons, the Sword Committee headquarters would not hesitate to expel them from D Shan and take away all their privileges. No matter what dynasty, what political structure, rebellion was something that could not be forgiven by the ruler, unless you had the strength to make the ruler fearful. Unfortunately, the sword masters of Yuzhong City did not have such strength. At best, there were only 8 or 9 spirit sword bearers, which was not enough for Lu Lei to deal with. How could they be the opponent of the Sword Committee? Alas, this is the matter of the London Special Envoy. The man's voice was a bit embarrassed. I heard that the Special Envoy is also an immortal sword master. She is not afraid of Lu Lei at all. More importantly, she represents Long Shijiendi. As long as Long Shijiendi says so, the Sword Committee will immediately convene a standing committee meeting to dismiss Gohan. Even if Lu Lei doesn't want to, he has to agree. Otherwise, Long Shijiendi and Haotian Jiendi won't let him go. He can only agree. But the special envoy hasn't shown up yet. The previous plan has been ruined. We can only think of another way, the man said in annoyance. Oh, what's your plan now? This woman was really Gohan's best partner. The questions that Gohan wanted to know, this woman asked all of them one by one. Let me ask you, do you know what impeachment of the Emperor's bloodline is? The man suddenly said a word that even Gohan hadn't heard before. Impeachment of the Emperor's bloodline? What is that? The woman was really confused. She didn't know what it was. This is something unique to Yuzhong City. We only learned about it a few days ago. When Zhetian Jiendi founded Yuzhong City, he made an agreement with the Yuzhong Sword Committee. If their actions don't conform to the fundamental interests of Yuzhong City, then Zhetian Jiendi's family has the right to impeach the Sword Committee. The impeachment needs to be led by Zhetian family. More than half of the Emperor's sword families in Yuzhong City have signed the impeachment. Once the impeachment begins, the entire Sword Committee, including the Sword Pavilion, will be suspended. Then, according to the motion proposed by Zhetian family, a referendum will be held. Once more than half of the citizens agree with the motion will be carried out. The Sword Committee can't stop it, the man said proudly. Oh my God, there's such a thing. We didn't know about it. The woman said in surprise. We didn't know either. If it wasn't for the leader of Jetian family bringing his family documents to my grandpa, I wouldn't have known about this either. This Jetian family has been trash for hundreds of years. Now it seems like they still have some use. The man laughed. Jetian family? Did they bring it up? Have they also joined your faction? With Jetian family joining, your chances of winning will be much higher. The woman was even more surprised. TCH, who cared about the trash from the heaven-shrouding family? Up until now, they only had an ancient sword-rank swordsman and a treasured sword-rank swordsman. Oh, it was said that the treasured sword-rank swordsman had already become a famous sword-rank swordsman. But they're still trash. They're just decorations on Mount Emperor. We can't even be bothered to look at these trash. This time, we didn't even want to bring them along. They actually shamelessly came to find us. It's good that they came. Otherwise, we really wouldn't be able to do anything to Gohan. Papa also has its uses. Indeed, in the eyes of Mount Emperor's Sword Emperor family, the Shi Tian family couldn't even compare to a pile of shit. No wonder Yi Wenjun was trying so hard to change the situation. Do you know how ridiculous that Jetian family is? This time, they brought the documents to find us so that they can leave their names on the impeachment case. Then, when the Sword Emperor family gathers next year, they can sit at the main table in the main hall. The man said as he laughed. He laughed so hard that tears flowed out of his eyes. These guys, after sitting in the corner for 200 years, they still have this little bit of self-respect left. I Ching really deserves it. If I were I Ching, I would have strangled these trash descendants to death. That way, they wouldn't be living in this world as a disgrace. Ah, this is too interesting. Too interesting. Pa! The man and woman suddenly heard a strange sound. The woman was startled. Brother Tao, what happened? I don't know. Maybe it's a mouse. Brother Tao said uncertainly. Brother Tao, I'm scared. Let's go. I also want to go home. The woman said timidly. Okay, let's go. The man had already finished enjoying himself. He couldn't wait to leave. If they stayed too late, who knew what the tigress in the house would do? The two people put on their clothes and jumped out from the place where they came in. After a while, Gohan stood out from the bath with an ashen face. He clenched his fists tightly. If he wasn't rational enough, he would have already jumped out and beaten the two people up. Gohan was very angry. However, he wasn't angry because of his situation. He was angry because of Jetian family and I Ching. To put it bluntly, everything that Gohan had now was left to Gohan by I Ching. Gohan had received a huge favor from I Ching. But now, I Ching's descendants had fallen to such a state. And that Yi Wenjun, he had treated him well, allowing him to obtain the relic left behind by the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor, and now he was repaying him like this. Of course, Yi Wenjun wasn't necessarily involved. After all, he wasn't the head of the Yi clan. His father was. But that wasn't important. It seemed that he needed to go to the Yi clan in the future to see what kind of trash I Ching's descendants were. He needed to help I Ching educate her descendants so that they wouldn't be trash forever. That way, he could repay I Ching's kindness. Gohan returned to his room with a belly full of anger. He wanted to sleep, but he couldn't. He didn't expect the imperial bloodline to be impeached. So the plan he made with Lu Lei couldn't be used. No, it wasn't that it couldn't be used. He just needed to add something else. But what should he add? Gohan was also confused. This news came too suddenly and too timely. Otherwise, when the impeachment of the imperial bloodline appeared, he and Lu Lei would be dumbfounded. Even if they thought of a way, they wouldn't have the strength to deal with it. While Gohan was thinking about this, Gohan's dimensional pocket suddenly changed. Chapter 664. At first, the movement of the dimensional pocket shocked Gohan. As a result, he took a closer look and found that the 8 little fellows were making trouble. Speaking of which, these two little fellows had been in the dimensional pocket for 20 days. In these 20 days, these 8 little fellows were suffocated. Sure enough, when Gohan released these 8 little fellows, he found that these 8 little fellows did not seem to be making trouble because they had been locked up for a long time, but because the 4 poor fellows had changed. In that battle, because it had swallowed the Aquarius constellations, it had turned into a blue orb. There had been no movement, but this time, the blue orb started to move, so the other little guys started to make a ruckus. So, Gohan released the 7 little fellows and the 4 poor fellows. Seeing the light of day again made the 7 little fellows a little uncomfortable, but soon, all their attention was attracted by the 4 poor fellows. After the sapphire swayed for a while, it suddenly turned into a pool of blue liquid and merged into Gohan's sheet. Gohan was shocked, thinking that the 4 poor fellows were trapped in the bedsheet. But this water stain actually moved quickly on the bedsheet. The bedsheet seemed to have become her swimming pool, allowing her to swim freely. Until she swam to the position of Gohan's feet, not knowing if it was because Gohan's feet were too smelly, the water stain suddenly flew out and turned into a water ball in the air. Finally, it turned into a little elf, which was the original appearance of the 4 poor fellows. It's so smelly. Sure enough, the 4 poor fellows were smelled by Gohan's feet. They staggered and flew to Gohan's head, lying in Gohan's hair, constantly sticking out their little tongues, looking pitiful. Poor 4 poor fellows. The 4 poor fellows are so pitiful. We have to restore her vitality. The 7 little fellows also jumped on Gohan's hair. Some flipped the 4 poor fellows' eyelids, some knocked on the 4 poor fellows' belly, some scratched the 4 poor fellows' feet, and some pulled the 4 poor fellows' ears. These guys, are you sure this can restore the 4 poor fellows' vitality? Turned out that it could. The 4 poor fellows couldn't stand the harassment, so they jumped up and stuck out their tongues at their sisters. As if they were diving, they plunged into Gohan's hair and leaned against Gohan's scalp. In an instant, a consciousness poured into Gohan's brain through Gohan's scalp. In an instant, Gohan knew the current situation of the 4 poor fellows. He never would have thought that the desolate 4 had already grown to the level of a meteor soul puppet. It was only a step away from the peak of the universe soul puppet. It seemed like the effects of the water bottle were very shocking. What was even more terrifying was that the 4 poor fellows had copied the ability of the water bottle. They could suppress any enemy below the meteor realm in their own bodies. At the same time, they would have all the power of this person, and any Yuan Ko wouldn't be a problem. The 4 poor fellows could at most suppress 5 meteor realm Yuan Ko enemies at the same time. If this ability was used well, Gohan would have 5 meteor realm Yuan Ko fighters. Although the 4 poor fellows were still the size of a finger, that was only because they hadn't changed. At most, they could become as big as a building. Everything could be done according to her wishes. Moreover, the 4th Pauper and Gohan's minds were completely connected. They had established a connection similar to the sword Maiden and the sword wielder. Gohan could see what the 4th Pauper saw through the 4th Pauper's eyes. There wasn't even a need for communication. With just a thought, she could know the other's thoughts. She really was a treasure. Gohan touched the 4 poor fellows' little head, and looked at the other fellows flying around in the sky. He didn't know what conditions they needed to grow to the level of the 4 poor fellows. If they grew up, what kind of power would they have? It was very exciting. The 4 poor fellows rested in Gohan's hair for a while before flying out and playing with her sisters again. Finally, she flew back into Chingpin's hair and didn't move again. She probably fell asleep. Sure enough, these fellows still liked Chingpin's hair more. After all, Chingpin's body had a milk fragrance that even Gohan would be intoxicated with. After the 8 poor fellows were done playing, Gohan thought he could rest for a while. However, not long after, the dimensional pocket started playing again. This time, the 3 unlucky Egyptian gods also woke up. After the battle, The three Egyptian gods had fallen into a deep sleep due to overexertion. They only woke up now. These three fellows weren't inferior to the 8 poor fellows. As long as there was a little space, they would be very happy playing. These three fellows were genuine universe-level Yuan Ko. They couldn't stay in the dimensional pocket for another 15 minutes. Helplessly, Gohan could only let them out. "Where is this?" the three fellows asked as soon as they came out. "This is my house," Gohan said with a straight face. "Tsk, your house is really good. It's much better than I Ching's house." Although I Ching's house was a little bigger, there was nothing except a bed and a table. "Your house is very complete." Isis didn't know if she was praising or mocking. "Your house is not bad. We will stay here. Give us 3 rooms like this." Bast looked around and already regarded Gohan's house as his territory. Isis agreed with this, and Anubis nodded his head vigorously. "There are no rooms like this. This is my master bedroom. If you guys want to stay here, I can move out." Gohan glanced at Bast. Bast shuddered and immediately changed his words. "Forget it. Give us 3 rooms that are slightly worse than this." "I don't even have 3 rooms. 1 room is enough for you guys. You don't need such a big place to sleep," Gohan continued. "What?" Bast was furious. "You actually want me to share a room with these 2 idiots? Even I Ching wouldn't dare to do this to me." "What did you say? Who's an idiot?" With a glare, Isis pressed Batet under her body and gave him a good beating. She then said to Gohan, "Say no more. The 3 of us will stay in 1 room. We have a good relationship." Gohan glanced at Isis and saw that she was riding on Bast's important position. He instantly lost interest in their chaotic relationship. "Who cares what they do, as long as they listen to me? Also, this is Yuzhong City. For safety's sake, I must limit your power to the level of a mouse-level Yuan Ko. You guys don't have any objections, right?" Gohan's words reduced the power of the 3 Egyptian gods to the lowest level. "No. Our contract states that as long as we listen to your commands, we will have the freedom to use our power." "Are you going back on your word?" Bast said as he was pressed under Isis' body. "Then I'll send you out of the city tomorrow. Outside of Yuzhong City, you can do whatever you want. Whatever level you want. I don't care, as long as you don't leave the 200-kilometer radius of Yuzhong City. Are you willing?" Gohan said coldly. "This." Bast and Isis looked at each other. As for Anubis's opinion, well, that stupid dog was responsible for listening. "All right then, we will maintain the level of a mouse-level Yuan Ko." Feeling the comfortable and warm bed, Bast did not have the strength to refuse. After all, they had to be more obedient in Yuzhong City. They would not be able to bear sleeping on the grass or in the woods in the wild. "Also, without my permission, you are not allowed to leave this house. Understand?" Gohan thought for a moment, then added, "If you want to leave, you must stay in my dimensional space. Without my permission, you are not allowed to leave." "Why is that?" Bast asked, feeling wronged. "It's simple. Since you have been restricted to the level of a mouse-level Yuan Ko, any swordsman near Yuzhong City can kill you. Yuzhong City is surrounded by surveillance equipment for Yuan Ko. If you expose yourself, I promise I will not come out to save you. I will even cut all ties with you." Gohan's cold words made Bast agree to this unfair contract again. "All right, your room is opposite mine. You can go now." As soon as Gohan gave the order, the 3 gods excitedly rushed into their own rooms, dancing with joy. It was hard to imagine how a cat, a dog, and a bear would look like in a room. "Oh, let me add one more thing. If you dare to do anything to the room and damage anything inside, you will turn into your animal forms and become my Chingpin's mounts." Gohan's words made the 3 unlucky souls' footsteps heavy. They were very careful, afraid of breaking anything. After finally dealing with the problem in his dimensional space, Gohan could finally sleep. The next day, when he woke up and opened his eyes, it was still dark. However, it was not night time now. It was because a small butt was sitting on Gohan's face. Smelling the milk fragrance in his nose, it was undoubtedly Qingpin's little butt. Fortunately, this little guy had learned to sleep in underwear. Otherwise, he would be sitting on Gohan's face without wearing underwear like he did in the first few days. Blue and white stripes. When Gohan moved Qingpin away from his face, he glanced at the color of her underwear. Annoying, Popper Air was scared by the stupid Gohan. Poor Qing was originally using a feather that he found from who knows where to scratch the second popper in his palm. When Gohan took her down, he naturally threw the second popper down as well. Remember to brush your teeth. Gohan knocked Qingpin's head. Good brother, Gu Yun has already brushed her teeth. Gu Yun is the most obedient. Gu Yun jumped out of the bathroom and flew into Gohan's arms. Her fragrant mouth was close to Gohan's nose. The fragrance of toothpaste filled Gohan's nose. Good. You are much more obedient than Qingpin. Gohan kissed Gu Yun's face and threw Gu Yun to Qingpin's side, letting them play together. This kind of life is really good. Gohan took a deep breath. In order to have such a life, Gohan must clean up all the Yuan-ko or people in front of him. No one could stop him. Chapter 665. Impeachment of the Imperial Bloodline? Is there such a thing? The cigarette in Lu Lei's mouth fell onto the table. He immediately began to look up the information. Finally, he found the relevant information in an inconspicuous corner. This information was not in the database of the computer, and for some reason, it was not recorded. It was in a corner of the archive room, covered in dust. Yes, it's true. It seems that we're in trouble. Lu Lei read through the information and threw it on the table. It seems that our plan from yesterday can't be used. It's not that it can't be used. I thought about it for a whole night and I finally have some ideas. Gohan smiled and told Lu Lei his plan. What the hell is in your head? You even thought of this? Lu Lei listened to the plan without blinking. He thought for a while and felt that it was feasible. He then said, Are you really sure about Tomono Kakashi? I can give it a try. I should be 80% sure. I will apply in the name of Yuzhong's Sword Pavilion. She and I are friends, so she won't refuse me. Gohan replied. When did you become friends with Tomono Kakashi? Even I don't have this chance. Lu Lei's tone was very jealous. Oh, and Etienne, you really don't need to take it out in advance. What if something goes wrong? It's fine. If I use the Heaven-Reliant sword, they'll know that I'm on guard. If they change their plans, it won't be fun anymore. Let's just let things develop according to their wishes. They'll be shocked. Gohan smiled. Master, I want to ask for someone from you. Who? Who is worth asking in person? Lu Lei asked curiously. A little guy, the younger brother of your disciple. If I don't save him, your disciple won't be your disciple anymore. Lu Yin thought that he would suffer. When he was arrested and brought to the police station, he also felt that he would be like those anti-Japanese fighters in the old movies before the apocalypse. For his own country, for the sake of justice in his heart, he would be loyal and unyielding, and would rather die than surrender. However, an hour after entering the prison, Lu Yin regretted it because he was locked up in the middle of a group of strong men. These brawny men were actually street thugs who were unwilling to work. Apart from playing games every day, they relied on the free nutrient solution to survive. These hooligans should be playing games at this time. Now that they were locked up in prison, they naturally had no games to play, so it was inevitable that they would be irritable. Anger would lead to conflict. At first, Lu Yin had been obediently locked in a corner without saying a word, and no one had come to cause trouble for him. However, whenever a fight broke out in the cell, all sorts of flying weapons would hit Lu Yin's body from time to time. In this situation, Lu Yin had no other choice but to admit that he had screwed up. There would always be a winner and a loser in a fight. Those who lost were beaten black and blue and hid in the corner. They were afraid of being beaten by the strong and naturally did not dare to fight back. However, there was a lot of anger in his stomach. What should he do? Naturally, he would find some weaklings to bully. There was no weakling more weakling than Lu Yin. A guy with a bloody nose and swollen face first kicked Lu Yin's back, kicking him into the wall, and his head hit loudly. Lu Yin raised his head dizzily and saw a guy with a nosebleed all over his face looking at him proudly, as if kicking him was a big deal. The others also laughed as if they were laughing at Lu Yin's weakness. Lu Yin couldn't stand this kind of mockery the most. He swung his fists at the man's head like a madman, but the man didn't even move. Instead, he kicked him in the stomach, sending him flying and crashing into the wall. Blood flowed out of his nose. Trash! The gangster spat on Lu Yin's head and then stepped on his head. He scolded in an imposing manner like Ling, "Come on, call me Grandpa, and Grandpa will let you go." Lu Yin did not speak. The gangster kicked him a few more times, but Lu Yin quickly learned to shrink into a ball to avoid the gangster's kick. The gangster kicked him more than a dozen times, getting more and more excited. Just as he was about to hit harder, a big fist smashed into his face. "Why did you hit me?" The gangster was stunned. He looked at the person who just hit him. It was the strong man who had just taught him a lesson. I, your father, can't help but want to bully you. The burly man laughed and imitated the gangster from before. He kicked the gangster to the wall and started punching and kicking him. "Haha. It's really comfortable to bully people. No matter what, I am the king of the food chain." In the end, the gangster was beaten until he fainted. It was not until the patrolling police found him that he was taken out and locked up in another cell. After that, until the night, Lu Yin huddled in the corner of the wall. From time to time, someone would come and kick him, step on his face, and spit on him. Lu Yin was like a piece of wood, silently enduring all this. Lu Yin thought that he would be able to survive in prison like this, but when night came, something even more terrifying happened. Lu Yin, who was lying on the ground to rest, suddenly felt someone beside him. Lu Yin thought that someone was going to beat him again. Just as he was about to endure it silently, he found that the person touched his pants. He actually wanted to take off his pants. He could endure being beaten, but he couldn't endure taking off his pants. Lu Yin hurriedly pulled his pants, but the other party did not give up. He directly tore Lu Yin's pants in half, leaving only his underwear on his body. In the darkness, Lu Yin could not see clearly who was doing it. He could only shout, "What are you doing? What do you want? I am just a child. I want children. I have tasted all kinds of men, but I have not tasted a little kid like you. I think it should be very tight and comfortable." "Ah," a rough man's voice said. "You are crazy. I am a man, not a woman." Lu Yin shouted. "That's right. If it was a daughter, I wouldn't be interested. It is good to be a man, good to be a man. Women are all bastards, running away with rich and powerful men. It's better to be a man. What's the point of conquering women? Conquering men is the greatest skill," the man said with a lecherous smile, causing the others to laugh. This kind of thing was too common in prison. These people were frequent visitors of the prison, so they often encountered the same thing. There were no women in prison, only men. Those men who did not have enough willpower could only be forcibly turned gay. The person who was about to force himself on Lu Yin was the strongest person in the prison, so no one was interested in stopping him. Instead, they were glad that they were hugging his ass. "Let me go. Don't touch me," Lu Yin shouted. "I am a good person. I came for justice. You can't treat a righteous person like me like this. You should deal with that animal Gohan. I am a good person, I am a righteous person." Lu Yin's words sounded strange. What was the use of saying that he was a righteous person at this time? It was a complete waste of time. However, this was the most painful thing in Lu Yin's heart. He came to protest for justice in the world, to punish evil people like Gohan. Why was he locked up in prison and humiliated like this? Why was he? He was on the side of justice. Ha ha, little boy, we are all righteous people here. We are all here to protest. We were caught together. Have you forgotten? The strong man laughed. Impossible, Lu Yin murmured. Since it is all for justice, how can you treat me like this? Hee, little boy, it is normal that you don't understand. We don't know what justice is either. As long as we have money, it will be fine. Let me tell you, money is justice. The man touched Lu Yin's butt and suddenly thought of something. He asked with a smile, "Oh right, is your online name Lu Family Little Yin? How do you know my online name?" Lu Yin was shocked. How did this man know his online name? Haha, it's simple. My online name is All for Justice. The burly man roared with laughter. Lu Yin, on the other hand, was completely dumbfounded. That was because the group he was in, the group that had organized the demonstration, and the group that was full of righteousness, had a username called All for Justice. What a righteous name! Naive guy, you always talk about justice. I should have guessed that it was you. Alright, stop struggling. Let Uncle Justice have some fun. There might be other uncles who want to have fun later. After saying that, he pounced on Lu Yin, wanting to remove the last defense on Lu Yin's lower body. Out of nowhere, Lu Yin mustered a burst of strength, and with boundless pain, he raised his head and bit the artery on the other party's neck. Logically speaking, it was almost impossible for a child to accurately bite a moving person's neck in the dark. However, it was as if Lu Yin had practiced this countless times. His first bite accurately bit the neck of All for Justice on his artery. "You stinking brat, how dare you bite me? You!" The strong man realized that he had been bitten and scolded. However, before he could finish his sentence, his body seemed to have been sucked dry. He went limp and lay on Lu Yin's body motionlessly. Although the other party did not move, Lu Yin did not dare to let go. He could only bite deeper and deeper. 10 minutes later, Lu Yin spat out a mouthful of blood that reeked of blood and pushed the strong man's body away. His eyes flashed with a blood-red light. Seeing this light, the others who were watching were suddenly shocked. It was as if they had seen an evil ghost. All of their wretched thoughts were put away, and they did not dare to move again. Chapter 666. Early the next morning, when the police in charge of the prison checked the prison, they found the sturdy man's body. The burly man's corpse was in a very strange state. There were no visible wounds on his body, but his skin and flesh had shriveled up, as if he was a corpse that had been air-dried. This change shocked the police. They had never seen such a strange corpse. They asked the prisoners around them what had happened, but none of these prisoners dared to speak. They only dared to glance at Lu Yin, who was lying on the side. The prison guards instantly understood that this was done by Lu Yin. But when these prison guards saw Lu Yin's very petite childlike body, they began to doubt their guess. They felt that it was impossible for Lu Yin to do this. Obviously, they didn't think that Lu Yin could do this with his size. But when they looked at the crowd with questioning eyes, these people looked at Lu Yin with incomparable horror, clearly telling them that it was Lu Yin who did it. Could it be that this kid really did it? There was no other way. Although the prison guards didn't care about the prisoners fighting in the prison, it was different if someone was killed. Now was a society governed by law. If someone died, they would also be held responsible. So they could only treat Lu Yin as a suspect. Although they didn't believe it, they could still use Lu Yin as a scapegoat when necessary. They had done this in the past. "Little guy, get up." A prison guard walked to Lu Yin's side and gave him a kick on the butt. But he never thought that Lu Yin would suddenly jump up from the ground like a dormant beast. His eyes glowed with scarlet light as he stared at the prison guard's neck. The prison guard suddenly felt that his neck was always being bitten. "What do you want?" The prison guard's body trembled. He remembered that when he was an outsider, he once met a tiger Yuan Ko. It also looked at his neck like this. The daytime sun shone on Lu Yin's eyes and made Lu Yin's eyes hurt. After the darkest night of his life, Lu Yin didn't seem to be used to the sun. He suddenly wished that he could return to the darkness, but it was a pity that this was not realistic. Fortunately, Lu Yin still had a bit of rationality left. He didn't bite the prison guard's neck like he did the night before. He just lowered his head and remained silent. Seeing Lu Yin's silent and timid appearance, the prison guard's courage seemed to have returned. He took out his baton and hit Lu Yin's head hard, making a crisp sound. He sternly scolded, "Let me ask you, did you kill this person?" "No, it has nothing to do with me." Lu Yin waved his hands. "Last night, this person wanted. Lu Yin was unable to finish his sentence. He stuttered because no man would be so embarrassed to say such a thing. "What does he want to do to you?" The prison guard, on the other hand, was filled with curiosity. In fact, he had already guessed what Lu Yin wanted to say, but he had asked on purpose. "He wanted to take advantage of me," Lu Yin said with his eyes closed. "Ha ha ha ha." The prison guard laughed wildly. "Not bad, not bad. People like you are the most popular in our prison, so you killed him, right?" Suddenly, the prison guard's laughter turned into coldness and seriousness. "It was because he wanted to rape you that you killed him for revenge, wasn't it?" "No. I never killed anyone. He died on his own, it has nothing to do with me," Lu Yin insisted. It's not up to you to decide whether you killed him or not, it's up to us to decide. But that's fine, come with us, we're going to change your cell. You're now a murder suspect. The prison warden let out a sigh of relief, at least he found a scapegoat. Let me go, I didn't kill anyone, I'm not going anywhere." Lu Yin struggled desperately. 2 or 3 prison guards immediately came up and grabbed Lu Yin's frail body. They were ready to escort him to another cell. At this time, they heard the sound of a cell door opening. What? Why is it so messy inside?" A prison guard brought 2 people into the cell. As soon as he saw the mess in the cell, he guessed that something might have happened. He habitually wanted to cover up this matter, but he immediately realized that with 2 people behind him, it was impossible to cover up. This made him feel a headache. "Captain, it's like this. This brat killed someone," the prison guard quickly said. "What? Killed someone?" The prison guard leader shouted. "Hurry up and arrest this suspect. We can't let any sinner go." "Understood, Captain." The prison guard smiled and was about to drag Lu Yin away. "Wait, where did he kill someone? Let me see." Gohan walked straight to the front and saw Lu Yin being dragged by 3 prison guards. "Little Yin, what's wrong? How could you kill someone?" Lu Shihua also rushed over, wanting to hug his little brother. "Are you saying that this brat killed someone?" When the prison guard leader saw this situation, he knew that this was bad. This suspect might be the person the sword wielder was looking for. This was big trouble. "Captain, there's no mistake. The dead person's body is lying next to this person. Also, we just observed that there is a trace of blood on the side of this brat's mouth. Later, we will take the blood to test, and everything will be revealed," the prison guard said confidently. "Alright, then go and test it," Gohan said with a smile. "Sister, who is this person?" In the laboratory, Lu Yin asked curiously while eating the food that Lu Shihua brought. Although this man was wearing a mask, his figure was somewhat familiar, as if they had seen each other every day. "He is sister's master." Lu Shihua originally wanted to say friend, but after thinking about it, she changed friend to master. This was because she felt that if she said friend, Gohan might be unhappy, and she didn't want Gohan to be unhappy. Master? Lu Yin felt a little strange. When did his sister have a master? Why didn't he know? But after thinking about it, Lu Yin suddenly remembered. His sister seemed to have told him that she had a master in the game, but Lu Yin didn't know who the master was. Sister. Lu Yin pulled Lu Shihua's hand. Is this your master in the game? Is he powerful? What level is he as a sword wielder in the game? Is he a sword wielder in real life? Why are the prison guards so afraid of him? Lu Yin asked a series of questions, and Lu Shihua didn't know how to answer. Moreover, Lu Shihua didn't know if she should answer these questions. Would it make Gohan unhappy? Lu Shihua looked at Gohan with a questioning gaze, and Gohan nodded in agreement. Yes, this is sister's master in the game. Master is a famed sword wielder in the game, and a treasured sword wielder in real life. Lu Shihua answered simply. A famed sword wielder. Lu Yin was shocked. He didn't expect his sister to have such a powerful master. Then, sister, do I still have to stay in prison? Lu Yin asked excitedly. It seemed like this sword wielder was here to save him, so he would definitely be able to get out of this prison and no longer have to stay in this damn place. Kid, don't you hate things like privileges the most? Why don't you care anymore today? Lu Shihua looked at Lu Yin strangely. This kid always talked about things like fairness, equality, democracy, freedom, and universal love. He even got locked up for protesting in pursuit of these things. Could it be that this was the reason why he understood? I don't care anymore. I don't care about those things anymore. They're all lies. Lu Yin said angrily. Thinking about the face of the group leader in prison, and thinking about how he was only left with his underwear, Lu Yin felt a wave of shame welling up in his heart. He didn't want to remember that horrible night ever again. He felt like an idiot, an idiot, an idiot. He was sold by someone, but he still helped them count their money. It's good that you understand. I already knew that you would be tricked by others, but I didn't expect you to be tricked so badly. Lu Shihua sighed. It was Big Sister who asked Master to save you. Tell me honestly, did you kill that person just now? Do you really know how to kill people? I killed him. Lu Yin lowered his head and said timidly, but he immediately raised his head with a look of fear on his face. Sister, I don't know how I killed him either. I only bit him once on the neck and he became like that. I really didn't want to kill him. What do? You really killed him? Lu Shihua was a little panicked. The education she had received for a long time told her that Lu Yin should pay with his life. But if she really wanted her brother to be buried with that scum, this was something Lu Shihua couldn't accept. She definitely couldn't watch her brother get shot. Don't worry, it's fine. I know everything. They won't be able to find anything. Gohan, who had been silently listening to the conversation between the siblings, said. As soon as he spoke, Lu Shihua felt reassured. Sure enough, after waiting for 10 minutes, the head of the prison guards came out with the examination report. He smiled and said that the blood on the side of Lu Yin's mouth was Lu Yin's blood, not the man's. The man might have died because of a heart attack or something. The surveillance in the ward was also broken, so they couldn't see who did it. But it should have nothing to do with Lu Yin. Then can I take Lu Yin away? Gohan asked the head of the prison guards. Okay, no problem. The head of the prison guards quickly said. This child is just a small matter. You guys keep an eye on him in the future. Don't let him be tricked by bad people and wander around the streets with others. I've finished the procedures, the child can leave now. Thank you. Gohan nodded and left with Lu Yin and Lu Shihua. Chapter 667. In the distant boundary of heaven, the great Son, Father, and Holy Spirit, the God of the Trinity, Lord Jehovah, was sitting on his throne in the clouds. Under his command there were 6 huge Ultraman angels with 5 pairs of wings. All of them had their eyes slightly closed, and their faces were solemn and full of holiness. I feel it. 2 familiar friends have returned, said Jehovah on the throne in a dignified voice, even though he was a god himself. Great Holy Father, I feel it too. An extremely handsome angel came out of the crowd and knelt in front of Jehovah. I, Gabriel, will never forget the smell of the sinful aborigine and the despicable traitor. Since you feel it too, I'll leave this matter to you. While they have just awakened, purify them with the great holy light. Go." After saying that, Jehovah fell silent. The originally clear image became blurred, and finally disappeared into the clouds. The 5 pairs of wings on Gabriel's back spread out like a peacock spreading its tail. He flapped his wings and left the illusory heaven. Gohan left the depths of the prison with Lu Yin and Lu Shihua. When Gohan walked to the door of a small door, he suddenly felt a magical power behind the door. This power is very strange. It seems to be the power of the sword-bearer, but it also doesn't seem to be the power of the sword-bearer. Gohan stopped and asked the head of the prison guards behind him, "What's behind this small door? Or is there someone locked inside?" The head of the prison guards hesitated. There were some things he could do, but there were some things he dared not say. He could only remain silent. The head of the prison guard's silence made Gohan even more curious, but he did not intend to ask the head of the prison guards because he did not need to. Gohan only needed to tap on his personal terminal to figure out the situation behind the small door. Turned out that the person locked inside the small door was a blacksmith. He was locked up here because he was researching a forbidden and unethical forging method. However, because he was a rare Grandmaster blacksmith, and there was not a second one like him in Yuzhong City, they naturally could not bear to kill him, so they could only lock him up here. Although blacksmiths had the power of sword essence, it could only be used to forge swords. They were no different from ordinary people in other aspects, so they were not locked up in the Morals and Discipline Committee's prison. Instead, they locked him up in an ordinary prison. As for the unethical forging method he researched, it turned out to be the synthesis of sword maidens. He researched breaking 2 sword maidens, then fusing them together to form a brand new sword maiden. It was said that he had made some progress on artificial sword maidens. Later, when he was about to use natural sword maidens for his research, the Sword Committee, he was found out and locked up in the prison. However, the Sword Committee did not intend to give up on such a useful talent. They specially set up a workshop for him in the prison, and it was far more comprehensive than the workshops in other places. It was one of the best in Yuzhong City. However, it was closely monitored by the Sword Committee. Even the use of every material had to be reported to the Sword Committee. After reading the information, Gohan lost interest in this person. He actually wanted to use natural sword maidens to conduct such inhumane research. Gohan did not even bother to look at him. "Captain, what should we do with this dead person?" After Gohan left the prison with Lucifer and Lu Yin, the prison guard asked the head of the prison guard. "Die of freezing, cold, starvation, stupidity, sickness. There are so many ways to die, you can say and write however you want. Do you still need to ask me?" The head of the prison guard rolled his eyes at the prison guard. "Who knows what's going on? The entire prison surveillance system seems to have malfunctioned last night, but that's good. No matter what you write, no one will be able to find out. It's really strange. Sister, aren't we going home?" Lu Yin watched as he followed his sister in a direction he had never been to before. He could not help but feel curious. Where was he going? Lucifer could not say anything. She did not know how to explain to her brother that she was living in her master's house. "Your sister is very talented. She will become a swordsman sooner or later. She cannot live in a rotten place like Toad Street. From now on, you and your sister will live in my house," Gohan said on behalf of Lucifer. "Really?" Lu Yin was excited. He and Lu Shihua had completely different personalities. Lu Shihua was more cautious, while he was more carefree. Lu Shihua was more hard-working and simple. Although Lu Yin was used to living a hard life and was usually quite thrifty, he still yearned for a good life. As long as it was possible, he did not care why he lived in a good place. "Sister, master." Lu Yin invented a new term to address Gohan. Gohan did not object. Sister, master, what do you think of my talent? Sister and I are siblings born from the same mother. My sister's talent is unique, so my talent should not be too bad, right? Lu Yin's meaning was very clear. She also wanted to become Gohan's disciple. Gohan did not comment. Coincidentally, there was an automatic sword essence detector on the side of the road. As long as he dripped a drop of blood on it, it would be able to roughly test the sword essence. Go and test yourself. Gohan's personal terminal touched the automatic sword essence detector. With a beep, the automatic sword essence detector started working. Lu Yin placed his finger into the blood collection slot. He felt as if his finger had been pricked by a needle. A drop of blood entered the automatic sword essence detector. Beep. The system is testing. Please wait. The automatic sword essence detector displayed such a prompt. Lu Yin stared at the screen of the automatic sword essence detector. 10 seconds later, the results were displayed. How could this be? Lu Yin's legs went soft and he fell to the ground. The results on the screen made Lu Yin unable to believe his eyes. There was a big 1 on the screen. Lu Yin was completely dumbfounded. Is this machine broken? It must be broken. Lu Yin could not stand up. He could only mutter to himself to comfort himself. No, it's not broken yet. Gohan helped Lu Yin up from the ground. You are not 18 yet. This is not your final outcome. Is that so? You scared me to death. Lu Yin calmed down a little. Although he knew that Gohan's words were mostly to comfort him, he could only choose to believe Gohan because this was the answer Lu Yin wanted to hear. However, in reality, Gohan did not think that Lu Yin had any hope of becoming a sword bearer. Even he, Gohan, had 9 quarks of sword essence when he was 14 years old. Generally speaking, the growth rate of sword essence in a human's body was faster the younger one was. After 14 years old, although it could still grow, the speed was more than 10 times slower than when they were young. There was a 99% chance that even when Lu Yin was 18 years old, he would only have 1 quark of sword essence. However, this 1 quark of sword essence was too strange. Since ancient times, humans had the least amount of innate sword essence on record, and that was 5 quarks. It seemed that Lu Yin had broken a world record. After this, Lu Yin fell silent. Even when he saw the unique and luxurious Phoenix restaurant, he could not arouse any interest. He seemed to have lost all hope for his future. Come and have some tea. When Maiden brought Long Xiaoya over with a plate of tea and placed a cup of tea for Gohan and the others, Lu Yin picked up the teacup in a daze and poured a mouthful of tea into his mouth. So hot, so hot. In the next second, Lu Yin spat out the tea leaves in his mouth, and kept fanning his mouth with his hand. This guy didn't even look at the temperature of the tea before pouring it into his mouth. Lu Yin's lips were blistered from the heat. Hee, what a big idiot! Qing Pin jumped down from the building and landed accurately in the baby pouch in front of Gohan's chest. He stuck his tongue out at Lu Yin, which made Lu Yin feel even more ashamed. Shihua, take your brother to his room to rest. He probably did not sleep well last night, Gohan said calmly. Lu Shihua nodded and prepared to take Lu Yin to his room. When entering the room, Lu Yin, who had his head down, suddenly bumped into something soft. What is this? It feels so soft and comfortable. Lu Yin could not help but exclaim. It reminded him of his mother's feeling. However, when he raised his head, his face was flushed. Only then did he realize that the soft thing he bumped into was not something else but a pair of large opals. So comfortable! Unexpectedly, the owner of the opals also blushed. She looked at Lu Yin with her watery eyes. Suddenly, she pressed Lu Yin's head with her right hand. She pressed Lu Yin's head on her opals and gave him a tight facial cleanser. Miss Anna. Lu Shihua quickly pulled Lu Yin's head out and fled into the room in the blink of an eye. So comfortable! Anna repeated the sentence in a silly manner. Her hand kept stroking her opie through her clothes. Her whole body seemed to be dripping wet. The ancient said, 30 is like a wolf, 40 is like a tiger, 50 is like a sitting on the ground and sucking soil. Judging from her age, Lou Anna should be at the level of sitting on the ground and sucking soil. Is everything ready? In a small room piled with all sorts of books from before the Great Calamity, a skinny old man was asking his son this question. Father, everything is ready. You can see a big show tomorrow. The son said excitedly. Don't talk big. You have to make sure again that everything is ready. Lu Lei can lose the battle tomorrow, but we can't afford to lose. Chapter 668. Good disciple, go watch TV, they're starting. Early in the morning, Gohan received such a message from Lu Lei. Gohan knew that the old guys of Dishan finally couldn't help but make their move. Dear viewers, welcome to Daily Live. I'm your dear host, Yang Lu. We just received the latest news. Because we don't want to see too much injustice buried under the crime, we don't want the real murderer to go unpunished. Today, more than 50 judges jointly filed a public prosecution in Yuzhong City People's Supreme Court. All the spearheads are pointed at the long-lost sword-bearer Gohan. Now, please follow our camera and interview these respectable judges. The TV camera turned and saw a large group of judges in judge robes, each holding a document in their hands, surrounded the door of the president's office with a smile on their faces. Dear judges, what's the situation now? The host pointed the microphone at a judge and asked. The situation is both optimistic and not optimistic. The judge's smile immediately disappeared and was replaced with an expression of righteous indignation. Although we have gathered more than half of the judges here, for some inexplicable reason, the president is still unwilling to come out to see us. He even locked himself in his office. So that's how it is. The host looked very surprised. By the way, I have a question to ask you. Why did you choose to launch a public prosecution today? Why didn't you launch a public prosecution before? It's not that we didn't want to launch a public prosecution before, but we couldn't find a target to launch a public prosecution. The judge said heavily, according to our law, if we want to launch a public prosecution, we must confirm that the person being prosecuted is a living natural person. But before this, Gohan has been missing. We couldn't confirm whether he was alive or not, so we couldn't launch a public prosecution. Wait, according to what you mean, can I guess that Mr. Gohan has been found? The host asked excitedly. Yes, we have found traces of Mr. Gohan. We are now very sure that Gohan is still alive and is in Yuzhong City. That's why we jointly launched a public prosecution to the president. The judge said with a serious face. May I ask what evidence do you have to prove that Jing is still alive? The host asked again. Of course we have evidence, and it's very conclusive evidence. The judge nodded. Then can you show the evidence to the audience in front of the TV? The host asked curiously. No. Because of privacy laws, we have no right to reveal Mr. Gohan's privacy. We also have to protect Mr. Gohan's privacy, so we can't publicize this evidence. However, I can assure everyone that we do have evidence. Here, I would like to use the camera to say something to Mr. Gohan. Suddenly, the judge faced the camera and said, Mr. Gohan, I know you are watching us in front of the TV. If you still have a little conscience, please come to our court immediately. We will definitely try your case impartially. We will not wrongly accuse anyone, nor will we let anyone go. Good, well said. The surrounding judges who were watching the interview cheered and applauded warmly. The judge was right. Gohan was indeed watching his performance in front of the TV. Good performance. It was very passionate. Gohan praised sincerely. Stupid brother, what are you going to do? Do you want to go to the court? Gu Yun asked as she pulled Gohan's hair. By the way, brother, what is the evidence that they are talking about? There are only two pieces of evidence that can't confirm that I'm still alive. The first is that the military governor in the game is still alive and kicking. They know that I'm the military governor, so they are sure that I'm still alive. The second is the heaven-reliant sword. As long as the heaven-reliant sword doesn't return to its dormant state, I'm obviously still alive. Then what is the evidence that they are talking about? Gu Yun asked again. Although the heaven-reliant sword can prove that I'm alive, it can't prove that I'm alive and kicking. Therefore, the only evidence they have is the admiral. Clearly, this judge is telling me that if I don't appear, he will reveal my admiral's identity to the public. At that time, no matter if it's in reality or in the game, my reputation will be ruined. Gu Han said calmly. Losing his reputation was such a miserable thing, but he was still calm. Then you can only show up? Unless you plan to expose your identity as the military governor, Gu Yun said with a grin. Of course I have to show up. Gu Han smiled. But not now. Their performance isn't over yet. We can't be the bad guys. The door is open. The door is open. A group of judges shouted excitedly. At that moment, the door to the director's office slowly opened. A white-haired director walked out of the office. He glanced at the 50 or so judges, then looked at the documents in their hands. He looked up at the sky for a minute or so and finally said, "Give me all your cases. Justice will not disappear, it will only be delayed." The director went back into the office. The TV station's camera was waiting outside the office. The TV station didn't seem to be interested in broadcasting other programs. It just kept broadcasting the situation in the court. After waiting for 20 minutes, the director came out again. "Judges who abide by justice, it's time for us to act. Come to the conference room for a meeting." So the cameras followed the judges to the door of the conference room. It was still a live broadcast. The TV station seemed to have found its conscience and didn't even interrupt the commercials. Or rather, it didn't dare to interrupt the broadcast. At this time, according to the ratings of the live broadcast in the whole of Yuzhong City had risen to 20%. As time went by, the ratings were still rising. But don't get me wrong. It wasn't that the people's pursuit of freedom, love, and democracy was so high. It was because 80% of the TV stations in Yuzhong City were broadcasting the live broadcast. Even some TV stations directly controlled by the Sword Commission, which had always been under Liu Lei's control and hadn't intervened in the Gohan case, began to broadcast the live broadcast. It seemed that the whole TV industry had found their conscience. As time went by, the ratings gradually rose to 40%. At this time, the door of the conference room was opened. 50 judges came out in a line. The last one to come out was the director. The director looked at his subordinates solemnly and said proudly, "Issue a subpoena. Ask Mr. Gohan to come to the court. He is now a suspect." Since ancient times, the court had issued subpoenas in the office. An office clerk would fill in the subpoena silently and then mail it to the suspect through 2 channels, mail and the internet. No judge had ever announced the subpoena to the media after leaving the conference room. In layman's terms, it was a show. But there was no doubt that this was a success. Whether it was the judge in the TV or the audience outside the TV, after hearing the dean's words, they all applauded in unison. The applause lasted for a long time. It was as if each of them had completed a supreme mission, and Gu Han had become a bug that increased their fame. "Director, how can we contact Mr. Gohan?" the reporter asked again. "There are 3 ways. The first is to send a paper subpoena, the second is to send an internet message, and the third is to make a call." After that, the director took out his personal terminal. "I'll call Mr. Gohan now and ask him to come to our court in person." In an instant, the cameras focused on the director's personal terminal. The director entered the complex court system, found Gohan's name registered in the system, and then gently tapped on it to make a call. The next second, the personal terminal on Gohan's hand rang, indicating that there was a new communication request for Gohan, and Gohan could choose whether to accept it or not. Qingpin, Gu Yun, and Long Xiaoya, who was sweeping the floor next to him, all looked at Gohan to see how he was going to deal with this matter, and this tricky communication problem. "Hello, what's the matter?" So he didn't speak, but quietly connected his personal terminal and said such a sentence very calmly, as if everyone was receiving a call from a stranger. "Hello, what's the matter?" Like a repeater, a few seconds later, the same voice came from the TV. The director's personal terminal was in hands-free mode, and Gohan's voice was transmitted to the ears of every household through the reporter's microphone. "What?" He actually answered it. The director and the reporter were both dumbfounded. They thought that Gohan would still use disappearance to hide and play with them like before. They were mentally prepared to respond to a dozen or 20 subpoenas. The director and the reporter took it for granted that Gohan would still refuse. They had already prepared a draft in their minds on how to criticize Gohan after Gohan refused, but they never expected that Gohan would actually answer this communication. They were stuck there and didn't know what to say at all. They were silent for 7 or 8 seconds. "Hello. If you don't speak, I'll hang up," Gohan said on the other end of the communication. Don't hang up." The director seemed to wake up from a dream and said nervously into the communication, "I am the director of the Yuzhong People's Supreme Court. I am now representing the Yuzhong People's Supreme Court to inform you, please come to our court within 3 days to accept our questioning. I refuse." On the other end of the communication was Gohan's contemptuous voice. "I am the sword bearer. The Yuzhong People's Supreme Court has no right to question me, unless you call in the Discipline Inspection Commission. I will only accept subpoenas from the Discipline Inspection Commission. Goodbye." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.